Daniel Hayes stood in the empty parking garage at 2 a.m., divorce papers crumpled in his fist, wondering if anyone would even notice if he just disappeared. Then a voice cut through the silence, cold, commanding, impossible to ignore. "You're not the only one who knows what it's like to lose everything." He turned to find Evelyn Cross, the untouchable billionaire CEO, standing 10 feet away with eyes that saw straight through every wall he'd built. What happened next would shatter both their carefully constructed worlds. If you want to see how a broken man and a dying woman found something worth living for, stay until the end. Like this video and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. The conference room smelled like expensive leather and disappointment. Daniel Hayes sat at the long mahogany table, barely hearing the quarterly projections being discussed around him. Numbers floated past his consciousness like debris in a river he was drowning in. His phone buzzed for the third time that hour. He didn't need to look to know it was his lawyer. Hayes. He jerked his head up. Marcus Chen, the regional director, was staring at him with barely concealed irritation. "I asked if you'd reviewed the Richardson account." Yes, the numbers are solid. We should proceed." Marcus's jaw tightened. "The Richardson account was reassigned to Patterson 2 weeks ago. Where the hell have you been?" 12 pairs of eyes turned toward him. Daniel felt his face flush. "I apologize. I'll get caught up." "See that you do." The meeting continued without him. Daniel stared at his notepad, at the absent-minded sketch he'd drawn of a stick-figure family with one person crossed out. His hand was shaking. He shoved the notepad into his bag and tried to focus on Marcus's voice, but all he could hear was Jennifer's words from 3 nights ago. "I can't do this anymore, Daniel. I can't be married to someone who's never actually here." The irony was suffocating. He'd worked 60-hour weeks trying to build something stable for them, for Emma, and Jennifer had left anyway. Took their daughter every other week per the custody arrangement. The apartment felt like a mausoleum during Emma's absences. Too quiet, too empty, too full of reminders that he'd failed at the one thing that mattered. When the meeting finally ended, Daniel gathered his things slowly, letting the others file out first. He didn't want to make small talk. Didn't want the sympathetic looks from colleagues who'd heard about the divorce through the office gossip mill. "Rough morning?" The voice came from behind him. Daniel turned to find Tom Patterson leaning against the doorframe, concern creasing his forehead. "I'm fine." "You're really not, man. Look, if you need to take some time, I said I'm fine." The words came out sharper than intended. Tom raised his hands in surrender and left. Daniel stood alone in the empty conference room, surrounded by chairs that still held the warmth of bodies that had somewhere else to be, someone else to go home to. His phone buzzed again. This time he looked. Final decree signed. It's done. Robert, just like that. 11 years of marriage reduced to a text message from his attorney. Daniel sat down heavily, the leather chair exhaling beneath him. It's done. The words didn't feel real. Nothing had felt real since the night Jennifer announced she was leaving, her voice flat and final, like she'd been practicing the speech for months. He pulled out his phone and opened his photo gallery. Emma's face filled the screen, gap-toothed smile, wild brown curls, eyes full of trust that he desperately hoped he hadn't destroyed. She was only 6, too young to understand why Daddy didn't live at home anymore, why Mommy cried when she thought Emma wasn't listening. The phone buzzed with a new message. Jennifer, picking Emma up from school today. Don't forget it's your weekend starting Friday. As if he could forget. Those weekends were the only thing keeping him tethered to anything resembling purpose. Daniel left the conference room and headed toward his office, a converted storage space with a narrow window that faced a brick wall. He'd been moved there 6 months ago, ostensibly because the company was reorganizing. Everyone knew it was a demotion. His performance had been slipping for over a year, missed deadlines, forgotten meetings, projects that limped across the finish line instead of sprinting. He passed the executive floor on his way to the elevator. Through the glass walls, he could see the corner offices, vast spaces with actual views, furniture that didn't come from a bulk supplier, artwork that probably cost more than his car. And there, visible through the largest window, was Evelyn Cross. Everyone knew who she was. The youngest CEO in the company's 60-year history. Self-made billionaire by 30. Featured in Forbes, Fortune, and every business publication that mattered. She'd taken a struggling pharmaceutical company and turned it into an empire through a combination of ruthless efficiency and genuine innovation. Employees spoke about her in hushed tones, brilliant, demanding, utterly without mercy for incompetence. Daniel had never spoken to her, had maybe been in the same room twice during company-wide meetings where she addressed them from a stage, her voice carrying the kind of authority that made people sit straighter in their chairs. She was beautiful in an intimidating way, sharp features, ice blue eyes, dark hair always pulled back in a style that screamed, "I don't have time for this." People said she was cold, inhuman even, that she cared more about profit margins than people. Looking at her now through the glass, Daniel felt something unexpected, recognition. She stood at her window, silhouetted against the city skyline, completely still. Her arms were crossed, her posture rigid. And even from this distance, even through the glass and the careful blank expression she wore like armor, Daniel saw it. Exhaustion. The bone-deep kind that no amount of sleep could fix. The elevator dinged. Daniel stepped inside, breaking eye contact with a woman who'd never noticed him in the first place. The afternoon crawled by in a haze of emails he couldn't focus on, and reports he had to read 3 times to absorb. At 4:30, his phone rang. Jennifer. "Daniel, we need to talk about Emma's parent-teacher conference." "What about it?" "It's next Tuesday, 2 o'clock. "I'll be there." A pause. "You said that last time." The accusation landed like a physical blow. "I had a client meeting I couldn't reschedule." "There's always a client meeting you can't reschedule." Jennifer's voice carried the weariness of arguments they'd had 100 times before. "Emma needs you to show up, Daniel, not just on weekends when it's convenient." "I show up every chance I get. The custody arrangement was your idea. You wanted every other weekend because you said you couldn't handle more with your work schedule. So don't pretend I'm keeping her from you." Daniel gripped the phone so hard his knuckles went white. "That's not fair." "What's not fair is Emma asking why Daddy doesn't come to her school things. What's not fair is me explaining to our 6-year-old that you love her even though you're never around." "I'm trying. Try harder." Jennifer hung up. Daniel sat in the silence of his office, the phone still pressed to his ear, listening to dead air. The brick wall outside his window was turning gold in the late afternoon sun. Somewhere in this building, people were wrapping up their days, heading home to families, to lives that made sense. He used to have that. Used to walk through the door and hear Emma's shriek of delight, feel her small body launch into his arms. Used to kiss Jennifer hello and pretend he didn't see the disappointment in her eyes when he was late again. He packed his bag mechanically and headed for the parking garage. The elevator descended into the earth, and Daniel descended with it, into the familiar numbness that had become his constant companion. The garage was nearly empty. Most people left by 5, but Daniel had stayed late finishing a report that probably didn't matter. His footsteps echoed off concrete walls. He found his car, a sensible sedan that Jennifer had picked out because it was good for families, and stopped. Someone had keyed the driver's side door. A long, jagged scratch that ran from the front wheel well to the back bumper, deep enough to catch the light. Daniel stared at it. He should feel angry, should feel something. Instead, he felt nothing at all. Just one more thing broken that he didn't have the energy to fix. He unlocked the car, threw his bag in the passenger seat, and sat behind the wheel without starting the engine. The garage was quiet except for the hum of fluorescent lights and the distant drip of water from a pipe somewhere. This was his life now. Sitting alone in parking garages, too tired to drive home to an empty apartment, too numb to care about anything except the weekend when Emma would be there and he could pretend to be a functional human being for 48 hours. His phone buzzed, a text from his mother. "Heard about the divorce. Call me when you're ready to talk. Love you." He wasn't ready to talk. Didn't know if he'd ever be ready. His mother would want to know how he was doing, what went wrong, whether there was any chance of reconciliation. She'd tell him everything would be okay, that time heals all wounds, that Emma would understand when she was older. All the things people say when they don't know what else to offer. Daniel tilted his head back against the headrest and closed his eyes. Maybe if he sat here long enough, the numbness would fade. Maybe he'd feel something again. Anger, grief, anything but this hollow emptiness that had taken up residence in his chest. Footsteps echoed through the garage. Daniel didn't open his eyes. Probably just another late worker heading home. The footsteps grew closer, then stopped, right next to his car. He opened his eyes. Evelyn Cross stood 3 feet from his window, looking directly at him. Daniel's brain short-circuited. The CEO of the entire company was standing in a parking garage at 7 p.m., staring at him through his car window. She wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than his monthly rent. Her dark hair pulled back severely, her expression unreadable. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then she knocked on his window. Daniel fumbled for the button, lowering the glass. "Ms. Cross, I know what grief looks like." Her voice was different from the board meetings. Quieter, almost gentle. "I saw you earlier, in the hallway outside the executive offices. I apologize if I was—" "You weren't anything. You were standing there looking at nothing, and I recognized it." She paused, seeming to weigh her next words carefully. "My husband died 3 years ago. Car accident. One phone call and everything I thought my life would be just ended." Daniel blinked. He'd never heard anything about Evelyn Cross being married, let alone widowed. The business profiles never mentioned a personal life at all. "I'm sorry," he managed. "Don't be. I'm not telling you for sympathy." She glanced at the key door of his car. "I'm telling you because I remember what it's like. That first year. When breathing feels like work and everyone expects you to just keep functioning like nothing happened." "My divorce was finalized today," Daniel heard himself say. He hadn't intended to share that. Hadn't intended to share anything with this woman who could fire him with a word. Evelyn nodded slowly. "Different kind of loss. Same weight." They stood in silence, him sitting in his car, her standing in the concrete wasteland of the parking garage. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Somewhere far above, the city continued its indifferent rhythm. "I'm not going to tell you it gets easier," Evelyn said finally. "People told me that and they were lying. It doesn't get easier. You just get stronger, or you don't, and you drown." She straightened, her corporate mask sliding back into place. "Come to my office Monday morning, 8 a.m. Daniel's stomach dropped. Is there a problem with my work? No. There's a problem with you wasting your potential in a storage closet doing work a trained monkey could handle." She turned to walk away, then stopped. "And Hayes? Don't be late. I hate waiting." She disappeared between the rows of cars, her heels clicking against concrete until the sound faded completely. Daniel sat in stunned silence, trying to process what had just happened. Evelyn Cross, the Ice Queen, the woman who'd built an empire on ruthless precision, had just shared something deeply personal with him in a parking garage, and then summoned him to her office like it was the most natural thing in the world. He started his car and drove home on autopilot, his mind replaying the conversation over and over. I know what grief looks like. How had she seen it? He'd been so careful at work, keeping everything locked down, not letting the cracks show. But she'd seen them anyway. The apartment was dark when he arrived. Daniel flipped on the lights, revealing the disaster zone he'd been living in. Takeout containers on the counter, laundry piled on the couch. Emma's toys scattered across the living room floor from last weekend, untouched because cleaning them up felt like erasing her presence. He stepped over a stuffed elephant and collapsed onto the couch, not bothering to move the laundry. His phone showed 3 missed calls from his mother, 2 texts from Tom asking if he was okay, and nothing from Jennifer. He set the phone face down and stared at the ceiling. You just get stronger, or you don't, and you drown. He was already underwater, had been for months, maybe longer. Jennifer had seen it before he did, the way he was disappearing into work, using exhaustion as an excuse to avoid dealing with anything real. She'd tried to pull him back. He'd resented her for it, accused her of not understanding the pressure he was under. And now she was gone, and he was sitting in an apartment that felt like a prison, wondering how he'd ended up so completely alone. Sleep came eventually, restless and full of dreams he couldn't remember. When his alarm went off at 6 a.m., Daniel lay in bed staring at the ceiling, trying to find a reason to get up. The only thing that moved him was the thought of Emma. Friday was 2 days away. He could hold on for 2 days. Work was the same fog of meaningless tasks. Daniel avoided eye contact, skipped lunch, and counted the hours until he could leave. Tom tried to make conversation. Daniel gave one-word answers until Tom took the hint and left him alone. Monday morning arrived too quickly and not quickly enough. Daniel stood outside Evelyn Cross's office at 7:55, his palms sweating. Her assistant, A sharp-eyed woman named Rita gestured him toward the door. "She's expecting you." Daniel knocked. "Come in." The office was enormous. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city. The furniture was modern and expensive, all clean lines and neutral tones. Evelyn sat behind a glass desk, typing on her laptop without looking up. "Close the door. Sit." Daniel did as instructed, settling into a chair that was far more comfortable than anything in his office. Evelyn finished whatever she was working on, then fixed him with those ice-blue eyes that seemed to see everything. "Tell me about the Richardson account." Daniel's mind went blank. That was reassigned to Patterson." "I know, I'm the one who reassigned it. Do you know why?" "Because I missed the deadline." "Because you've been phoning it in for 6 months and I don't tolerate mediocrity." She leaned back in her chair. "You're better than this, Hayes. I've seen your work from 2 years ago. You were sharp, creative. You saw angles other people missed. That was before your life fell apart." "I know." She pulled a folder from her desk and slid it across to him. "This is the Meridian Project. Pharmaceutical merger, 8 figures, extremely time-sensitive. It's falling apart because the team can't get the regulatory framework right. You're going to fix it." Daniel opened the folder. The scope was massive. Months of work distilled into a problem that needed solving immediately. This is executive-level work." "Yes, and you're going to do it." Evelyn's expression didn't change. "I'm not offering you sympathy, Hayes. I'm offering you purpose. You can sit in your storage closet pushing papers until you quit or get fired, or you can step up and remember who you were before grief turned you into a ghost." "Why me?" "Because I see you drowning and I'm throwing you a rope. Whether you grab it or let it float past is your choice." She turned back to her laptop, a clear dismissal. "Report back to me Friday with a preliminary analysis. Rita will give you access to the files." Daniel stood, clutching the folder like a life preserver. "Ms. Cross, we're done for now." He left in a daze. Rita handed him a security badge without comment, and suddenly Daniel had access to files and databases he'd never been cleared for before. The Meridian Project was even more complex than the folder suggested. Layers of regulation, competing stakeholder interest, and a timeline that made his stomach clench. It was also the first thing in 6 months that made him feel anything other than numb. He worked through lunch, then through dinner, spread out across his cramped office with documents and notes and diagrams. The regulatory framework was a mess, but there was a pattern to it, a way through. He just had to find it. At 8 p.m., Tom poked his head in. "You're still here?" "Yeah, big project. Want to grab a drink?" "Can't. Deadline." Tom studied him for a moment. "It's good to see you focused on something again." After Tom left, Daniel kept working. The pieces were starting to fit together. If they restructured the merger as a partnership first, then transitioned to full acquisition after the regulatory approval, it could work. It would take careful timing, but it could work. His phone buzzed. "Jennifer, Emma wants to talk to you. Call when you have a minute." Daniel immediately dialed. Emma's voice exploded through the speaker. "Daddy." "Hey, sweetheart, how was your day? We made volcanoes in science. Mine exploded the biggest and got all over Tommy's shirt, and he cried. But the teacher said it was okay because that's what volcanoes do." Daniel smiled for the first time in days. "Sounds like you're learning important lessons about natural disasters." "Uh-huh. Daddy, are you coming to my school thing?" His smile faded. "The parent-teacher conference, Tuesday. I'll be there, Emma, I promise." "Mommy says you're really busy." "I'm never too busy for you." "Okay. Love you, Daddy." "Love you too, sweetheart. More than anything." After she hung up, Daniel sat in the silence of his office, holding the phone. More than anything. He meant it. Emma was the reason he got up in the morning, the reason he kept trying even when trying felt impossible. He looked at the Meridian files spread across his desk. Evelyn was right. This was purpose, not a replacement for the family he'd lost, but something to focus on besides the emptiness, something to prove he wasn't completely broken. Daniel worked until midnight, then went home and collapsed into bed fully clothed. When his alarm went off, he felt something he hadn't felt in months: anticipation. The problem had a solution. He could see it forming in his mind, just out of reach. One more day of work and it would crystallize. Tuesday morning brought rain. Daniel sat through his regular meetings in a fog, his mind still churning on the Meridian problem. At 1:30, he packed up and headed for Emma's school. The parent-teacher conference was at 2. He'd make it with time to spare. Then Marcus Chen caught him in the hallway. "Hayes, we need to talk about the Morrison account." "Can it wait?" "I have an appointment at 2. "This'll just take a minute." It took 45 minutes. By the time Daniel escaped, it was 2:15. He drove 20 over the speed limit, parked illegally, and sprinted into Emma's school with his shirt untucked and his hair plastered to his forehead from the rain. The classroom was empty except for Jennifer, who stood by the window with her arms crossed. "She left 10 minutes ago," Jennifer said quietly. "I got stuck in a meeting." "You're always stuck in a meeting, Daniel." She picked up her purse. "Mrs. Patterson said Emma's doing well, reading above grade level, struggles with math. You can get the full report from the school office." "Jennifer, I'm sorry. Stop apologizing and start showing up." She walked past him toward the door, then paused. "Emma cried when you didn't come. She tried to hide it, but I saw. Do better." The door closed behind her with a soft click that sounded like a gunshot. Daniel stood in the empty classroom, surrounded by children's artwork and alphabet posters, and felt the numbness crack open. Grief poured through, raw and devastating and completely overwhelming. He'd failed her, failed the one person who mattered most. His phone buzzed, a text from Rita. "Ms. Cross wants to see you. Now." Daniel drove back to the office through sheets of rain, his vision blurred by water and tears he refused to acknowledge. He probably looked like hell when he walked into Evelyn's office, soaked through, disheveled, barely holding himself together. She looked up from her desk, took in his appearance, and said nothing for a long moment. "Bad day?" she finally asked. "I missed my daughter's parent-teacher conference." "On purpose?" "No. I got stuck in a meeting and lost track of time." Daniel ran his hand through his wet hair. "I promised her I'd be there. I broke my promise." Evelyn studied him with those unsettling blue eyes. "Sit down. You're dripping on my carpet." He sat. "Let me tell you something about promises," Evelyn said. "They're only worth something if you build your life around keeping them, not if you fit them in between other obligations." She pulled a tissue box from her drawer and slid it across the desk. "Your daughter needs to be your first priority, not this job, not impressing me. Her." "I know that. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, you're making the same mistakes that destroyed your marriage, letting work consume you because it's easier than dealing with real life." She leaned forward. "I hired you for the Meridian project because I saw potential. But if you can't balance this job with being a father, I'll find someone else. Emma deserves better than a parent who shows up when it's convenient." The words hit like physical blows. Daniel wanted to argue, to defend himself, but he couldn't. She was right. "I don't know how to do this," he admitted. "How to be good at my job and be the father she needs. I'm failing at both." "Then you need to get better at prioritizing." Evelyn's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "When my husband died, I threw myself into work. 100-hour weeks, sleeping in my office. I thought if I just worked hard enough, I wouldn't have to feel anything." She paused. "It didn't work. The grief was still there, waiting, and by the time I figured that out, I damaged relationships I couldn't repair." How did you move forward?" "I didn't. Not for a long time. I just survived." She stood and walked to the window, her back to him. "Eventually, I realized that surviving wasn't the same as living. I had to make a choice, keep hiding behind work or actually deal with what I'd lost." Daniel watched her silhouette against the city lights. For the first time, he saw her as something other than the untouchable CEO. She was human, flawed, carrying her own weight that no one else could see. "The Meridian Project," he said slowly. "You're not just testing my professional skills, are you?" "No. I'm testing whether you can handle pressure without completely falling apart." She turned to face him. "Life doesn't stop throwing problems at you because you're grieving. You either learn to manage both or you go under." "And if I can't? Then you'll join the long list of people who had potential and wasted it." Her voice was matter-of-fact, without cruelty. "But I don't think you will. I think you're stronger than you believe. You just need to remember how to fight." Daniel left her office as the rain finally stopped. The city glowed in the aftermath, wet streets reflecting neon and streetlights. He sat in his car for a long time before starting the engine. Thursday morning, he called Jennifer. I want to change the custody arrangement, he said. I want Emma more. I'll make it work with my schedule. Silence on the other end. Then, what brought this on? I'm tired of being a weekend dad. She deserves more than that. Daniel, if you're doing this because you feel guilty, I'm doing this because I love her and I've been a coward. His voice cracked. I can't promise I'll be perfect, but I can promise I'll try. Really try this time. Another pause. Okay, let's talk about it. But if you commit to this and then flake out, I'm done giving you chances. I understand. They agreed to meet over the weekend to discuss details. When Daniel hung up, he felt something shift inside him. Not healing, not yet, but the faintest possibility that healing might be possible. Friday morning, he walked into Evelyn's office with his preliminary analysis of the Meridian project. She read through it without comment, her expression unreadable. This could work, she finally said. You sound surprised. I am, pleasantly. She set the report down. You found an angle I hadn't considered. The phased partnership approach. It's creative, risky, but creative. Risk is inevitable. The question is whether it's calculated or reckless. A smile ghosted across her face, there and gone so quickly he almost missed it. Keep working on this. I want a full proposal by end of next week. I'll have it done. As Daniel stood to leave, Evelyn spoke again. Your daughter. Did you work things out? I'm trying to. Meeting with my ex-wife this weekend to discuss custody. Good. She returned her attention to her computer. Don't screw it up. That Friday, Emma arrived with an overnight bag and a drawing she'd made at school. Stick figures labeled Daddy and Me holding hands under a rainbow. Daniel taped it to the refrigerator and felt his chest constrict with something that might have been hope. They made pancakes for dinner because Emma insisted pancakes were the best food. They watched a movie about talking animals. They built a fort out of couch cushions and blankets, and Emma fell asleep inside it with her head on Daniel's shoulder. He carried her to bed, tucked her in, and stood in the doorway watching her sleep. She was so small, so trusting. She believed he would take care of her, that he would be there when she needed him. He couldn't let her down again. Sunday evening, after dropping Emma back at Jennifer's, Daniel returned to work. The office was empty. He spread the Meridian files across the conference room table and dove in, building the proposal piece by piece. The regulatory framework made sense now. The timeline was aggressive but achievable. The financial projections were solid. At midnight, he looked up to find Evelyn standing in the doorway. You're here late, she observed. So are you. I'm always here late. She walked into the room, studying the documents spread across the table. Making progress? I think so. The phased approach creates flexibility we wouldn't have otherwise. If we time the regulatory filings right, we can minimize exposure while maximizing leverage. Evelyn picked up one of his draft timelines. You're accounting for FDA approval delays? 3 scenarios: best case, realistic case, and worst case. Each has contingency plans. She nodded slowly, still reading. You've thought this through. It's what you hired me to do. I hired you to remember you're capable of thinking. She set the timeline down and met his eyes. You're doing that, finally. They worked side by side for the next 2 hours, refining projections and stress testing assumptions. Evelyn was brilliant, seeing connections he'd missed, asking questions that forced him to sharpen his reasoning. But more than that, she was present, fully engaged, not checking her phone or thinking about other meetings. Just here, in this moment, solving this problem. At 2 a.m., she called it. Go home, Hayes, get some sleep. You should take your own advice. I don't sleep much these days. She gathered her papers. Old habit. Daniel hesitated. Can I ask you something? Depends on the question. In the parking garage, you said your husband died 3 years ago. Does it ever get easier to be alone? Evelyn was quiet for a long time. When she spoke, her voice was softer than he'd ever heard it. No. You just get better at pretending it doesn't hurt. She left without another word, her footsteps echoing down the empty hallway. Daniel sat in the silence, surrounded by spreadsheets and projections, and understood something fundamental. Evelyn Cross wasn't cold or inhuman. She was surviving the only way she knew how, by building walls so high that nothing could touch her, just like he'd been doing. The difference was she'd recognized it in him. had seen through his carefully maintained facade to the broken man underneath. And instead of looking away like everyone else, she'd done something about it, given him a rope when he was drowning. The question now was whether he was strong enough to grab it and pull himself back to shore, or whether he'd let go and sink into the dark water that had been trying to claim him for months. Daniel looked at Emma's drawing on his phone, stick figures holding hands under a rainbow. She believed in him, still trusted him even after he'd let her down. He wouldn't waste that. Monday morning, he showed up at 7 a.m. and worked until 7 p.m. Tuesday, he left at 5:30 for Emma's soccer practice. Wednesday, he worked late but scheduled it in advance. Thursday, he took a half day to volunteer at Emma's school. And Friday, he delivered the completed Meridian proposal to Evelyn's office. She read it in silence while he stood there trying not to fidget. When she finished, she looked up with an expression he couldn't quite read. "This is exceptional work, Hayes. Thank you. I'm presenting it to the board Monday. If they approve, you'll lead the implementation." Daniel's heart skipped. Lead, as in project manager, full authority, full responsibility. She stood and extended her hand. "Don't make me regret this." He shook her hand, her grip firm and sure. "I won't." As he turned to leave, she spoke again. "Hayes, one more thing." He looked back. "Your daughter's drawing, the one on your phone. Keep looking at it when things get hard. Remember what you're working for." Daniel stared at her. "How did you—" "I noticed things." A ghost of a smile. "Now get out of my office. I have actual work to do." He left feeling lighter than he had in months. The numbness was still there, lurking at the edges, but something else was growing alongside it. Purpose, direction, the sense that maybe, just maybe, he could build something from the wreckage of his life. That weekend with Emma was different. Better. They went to the park, fed ducks, got ice cream. She told him about school, about her friends, about the science project she was planning. And Daniel listened, really listened, without his mind wandering to work or spiraling into grief. Sunday night, tucking her into bed, Emma wrapped her arms around his neck. "Daddy?" "Yeah, sweetheart?" "I'm glad you're not sad anymore." The words hit him like a freight train. "I'm still a little sad sometimes, Em, but I'm getting better." "Good, because I like it when you smile." After she fell asleep, Daniel sat on the couch and cried. Real tears. The kind he'd been holding back for months. Not tears of despair, but of release, of finally letting himself feel something other than empty. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. The board approved Meridian. Implementation starts next week. Don't celebrate too much. The real work is just beginning. EC. Daniel smiled through his tears. Evelyn Cross had given him more than a project. She'd given him a chance to prove to himself that he wasn't broken beyond repair, that he could still be the man Emma needed him to be. And for the first time since Jennifer walked out, Daniel believed he might actually succeed. The Meridian project consumed Daniel's life in a way that felt different from before. This time, the long hours weren't about hiding from his problems. They were about proving he could handle both. Excel spreadsheets and regulatory documents filled his screen during the day, but he left at 5:30 every Tuesday and Thursday for Emma. Soccer practice, school events, just sitting with her while she did homework. The balance was precarious, held together by careful scheduling and sheer determination not to fail her again. 3 weeks into implementation, Daniel sat in Evelyn's office reviewing timeline adjustments. The FDA had requested additional documentation on the pharmaceutical compounds involved in the merger, which meant pushing back the Phase 2 deadline by 6 weeks. "We can absorb the delay," Daniel said, sliding the revised timeline across her desk. "I've built in contingencies for exactly this kind of scenario." Evelyn studied the document, her expression unreadable. She looked tired, more than usual. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and twice during their meeting she'd paused mid-sentence like she'd forgotten what she was saying. "You look like hell," Daniel said before he could stop himself. Her eyes snapped up. "Excuse me? I'm sorry, I just meant you seem exhausted. Are you feeling okay?" "I'm fine." The words came out sharp, defensive. "Let's focus on the project." But she wasn't fine. Daniel had spent enough time around her now to recognize the signs. The way she gripped her pen too tightly, the slight tremor in her left hand that she tried to hide, the moments where pain flickered across her face before she locked it down. "Ms. Cross, the timeline looks acceptable," she interrupted. "Present it to the regulatory team tomorrow. Make sure Patterson is looped in on the compound documentation." It was a dismissal. Daniel gathered his papers and left, but the concern lingered. He'd seen that kind of exhaustion before. In his father, during the months before they discovered the tumor. The way someone looked when their body was fighting a battle they weren't talking about. The next morning, Daniel arrived at 7 to find Evelyn's office dark. Rita sat at her desk looking worried. "She's not in yet?" Daniel asked. "Called in sick, first time in 3 years. Rita lowered her voice. "Between you and me, she sounded terrible on the phone. I offered to send someone to check on her, but she hung up on me." Daniel made it through his morning meetings on autopilot, his mind stuck on Evelyn alone in whatever penthouse apartment she probably lived in, too stubborn to admit she needed help. By lunch, he couldn't take it anymore. He pulled up the company directory and copied her address from the emergency contact section. 40 minutes later, he stood outside a sleek high-rise in the financial district, wondering what the hell he was doing. This was his boss, his CEO. You didn't just show up at your boss's apartment because you were worried. That crossed about 15 professional boundaries. He pressed the buzzer anyway. No response. He tried again, holding it longer. The intercom crackled. "Go away!" Evelyn's voice sounded rough, strained. "It's Daniel Hayes, let me in." "I said go away." "And I'm saying let me in or I'll tell Rita to call 911 for a wellness check. Your choice." Silence. Then the door buzzed open. Daniel took the elevator to the 23rd floor. The hallway was pristine, cream carpet, recessed lighting, the kind of quiet that money bought. He found her door and knocked. It opened 6 inches. Evelyn stood there in sweatpants and an oversized sweater, her hair down for the first time he'd ever seen. She looked smaller without the armor of her business suits. Vulnerable. "You're an idiot for coming here," she said. "Probably. Are you going to let me in?" She stepped back. The apartment was stunning, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, minimalist furniture, artwork that belonged in museums. But what caught Daniel's attention was the prescription bottles lined up on the kitchen counter. 8 of them, at least. He recognized some of the names from when his father was sick. Chemotherapy medications. Evelyn followed his gaze and her expression hardened. "Now you know. Satisfied?" "How long?" Daniel asked quietly. "Does it matter?" "Yes." She moved to the couch and sat down carefully, like her bones hurt. 18 months. Ovarian cancer, stage 3 when they found it. She laughed without humor. "Funny thing is, I went to the doctor because I thought I was overworking myself. Turned out the exhaustion was tumors, not meetings." Daniel sat in the chair across from her, trying to process this information. Evelyn Cross, the woman who ran a billion-dollar company with an iron fist, had been fighting cancer alone for a year and a half. "Who knows?" he asked. "My oncologist, the pharmacy. Now you." She met his eyes. "And it's going to stay that way. If word gets out that the CEO is sick, the stock price tanks. Investors panic, competitors circle like sharks. So you're just going to keep working yourself to death while you're getting treatment?" "I'm managing." "You look like you can barely stand up." "Gee, thanks. You really know how to make a girl feel special." She closed her eyes and leaned her head back against the couch. "I had treatment yesterday. The new protocol hits harder than the last one. I'll be fine by Monday." Daniel looked at her. Really looked. The pallor of her skin. The way she held herself like movement caused pain. The tremor in her hands that she couldn't quite control. "When's your next appointment?" he asked. "That's not your concern." "When is it, Evelyn?" The use of her first name made her eyes open. They stared at each other for a long moment. "Thursday," she finally said. 2 p.m. "And before you get any ideas about playing hero, I don't need someone to hold my hand through medical appointments." "Everyone needs someone," Daniel said quietly. "Even you." Touching. "Now if you're done with your intervention, I have work to do. You're supposed to be resting. I'll rest when I'm dead." She stood up, swayed slightly, and sat back down. "Damn it." Daniel moved to the kitchen and started opening cabinets. "When did you last eat?" "I don't know. Yesterday morning, maybe." "That explains the dizziness." He found crackers, peanut butter, and made her a plate. Eat this. Slowly. Evelyn looked at the plate like he'd handed her a live grenade. I'm not hungry. I don't care. The chemo makes you nauseous, but an empty stomach makes it worse. My dad went through this. You need to keep something down. She took the plate with obvious reluctance and nibbled on a cracker. Daniel filled a glass with water and set it next to her. Your father had cancer? She asked. Pancreatic, 5 years ago. He lasted 8 months after diagnosis. I'm sorry. So am I. Daniel sat back down. He was stubborn too. Didn't want to burden anyone, kept insisting he was fine until he literally couldn't get out of bed anymore. Evelyn ate another cracker in silence. Some color was returning to her face, though she still looked like hell. I'm not your father, she said finally. No, you're worse. At least he eventually accepted help. Help doesn't cure cancer. No, but it makes the fight less lonely. She set the plate down, having managed 3 crackers and half the water. Why are you doing this? Because someone did it for me when I was drowning. Seemed only fair to return the favor. I gave you a project. That's not the same as showing up at someone's apartment and force-feeding them crackers. You gave me more than a project. You gave me a reason to stop feeling sorry for myself. Daniel leaned forward. I'm not asking to be your best friend, Evelyn. I'm just saying you don't have to do this alone. I've been alone for 3 years. I'm used to it. Being used to something doesn't make it right. They sat in silence, broken only by the distant sound of traffic far below. Evelyn looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite read, part suspicion, part something that might have been hope. Thursday at 2, she said quietly. If you're serious about this, meet me at St. Catherine's Medical Center. But Hayes? Yeah. If you tell anyone about this, I will destroy your career so thoroughly you'll be unemployable. Clear? Crystal. Daniel left shortly after, his mind reeling. On the drive back to the office, he called Jennifer. Hey, she said, surprise evident in her voice. Is everything okay with Emma? Emma's fine. I needed to talk to someone. He pulled into a parking lot and cut the engine. If you could go back before things fell apart between us, what would you tell yourself? Jennifer was quiet for a long moment. I'd tell myself that loving someone isn't enough if you're not actually present in their life. That I deserved more than being someone's afterthought. Her voice softened. Why are you asking this now? I'm watching someone make the same mistakes I did, isolating herself, thinking she can handle everything alone. And I don't know how to help without overstepping. Is this about work? Yeah, my boss. Daniel paused, choosing his words carefully. She's going through something difficult and refusing to let anyone in. Then be persistent, Jennifer said. Not pushy, but persistent. Show up. Keep showing up even when she pushes you away. Eventually, she'll either accept the help or tell you to back off permanently, but at least you'll know you tried. That's actually good advice. Don't sound so surprised. I'm capable of wisdom occasionally. She hesitated. Daniel, things are better between us lately. Emma's noticed. She's happier. I'm trying. I know, and it matters. Jennifer's voice grew warmer. I should go. Staff meeting in 5, but call any time you need to talk. After they hung up, Daniel sat in his car feeling something shift in his chest. He and Jennifer would never get back together. That door was closed permanently. But maybe they could build something different, something better, co-parents who actually communicated, friends, eventually. Thursday morning arrived cold and gray. Daniel finished his morning meetings early and drove to St. Catherine's Medical Center. The oncology wing was on the 4th floor. He found Evelyn sitting in the waiting room, dressed in expensive casual clothes that somehow still screamed CEO. She looked up when he approached, her expression unreadable. You actually came. I said I would. People say a lot of things. She stood as a nurse called her name. You can wait here. This takes about 3 hours. I'll be here when you're done. Evelyn studied his face like she was looking for the lie, the ulterior motive. Finding none, she nodded once and followed the nurse through the double doors. Daniel settled in for a long wait. The waiting room gradually filled with other patients and their families. An elderly man sat with his wife, holding her hand while she dozed. A young woman in a headscarf read a magazine, her mother beside her doing a crossword puzzle. Everyone here was fighting the same invisible enemy, their private wars playing out in uncomfortable chairs and fluorescent lighting. He pulled out his laptop and worked on Meridian documentation, answering emails, reviewing regulatory filings. Time crawled by. At 4:30, Evelyn emerged looking worse than when she'd gone in, pale and shaky, moving carefully like everything hurt. "Ready?" Daniel asked, closing his laptop. "I can drive myself." "Like hell you can. Come on." He expected her to argue, but she was too exhausted. They walked to his car in silence. Evelyn slid into the passenger seat and closed her eyes. "Your place or mine?" Daniel asked. Hilarious. He drove to her apartment building. When he pulled up to the entrance, she didn't move to get out. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for being here." "No problem." "I mean it. I don't—" She trailed off, struggling with words. "I don't let people see me weak. It's not who I am." "Being sick isn't being weak. In my world, it is." She opened her eyes and looked at him. "Weakness gets exploited. People see vulnerability and they attack. It's how business works." "That's a lonely way to live." "It's the only way I know." Daniel thought about that as she got out of the car and disappeared into her building. The only way she knew. Because she'd built her entire identity around being untouchable, and cancer had shattered that illusion. Now she was trying to maintain the facade while her body betrayed her. He understood that better than she probably realized. He'd done the same thing during his divorce, pretending everything was fine while his life disintegrated, keeping up appearances until he couldn't anymore. The following weeks fell into a pattern. Thursday afternoons, Daniel drove Evelyn to treatment and waited. They didn't talk much on these drives. Sometimes she slept. Sometimes she stared out the window. He learned to bring books, to give her space while still being present. At work, nothing changed. Evelyn remained the demanding CEO, pushing for results, accepting nothing less than excellence. The Meridian project moved forward despite FDA delays and stakeholder complications. Daniel worked late nights and early mornings, balancing project demands with Emma's needs and Evelyn's Thursday appointments. It should have been unsustainable. Somehow, it worked. One Thursday in late October, Daniel sat in the oncology waiting room reading a thriller he wasn't really absorbing. His phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. "Emma's school play is November 15th, 7 p.m. She has a speaking part." Daniel immediately marked it in his calendar and responded, "I'll be there. Wouldn't miss it." Jennifer sent back a thumbs-up emoji, which felt like progress. When Evelyn emerged from treatment that day, she looked particularly rough. Pale as paper, trembling, barely able to walk. Daniel helped her to the car, got her settled, and drove in silence. Halfway to her apartment, she spoke. "Pull over." "What?" "Pull over now." He swerved into a parking lot just as Evelyn shoved the door open and vomited onto the pavement. Daniel held her hair back, dark and silky, and nothing like the severe bun she wore to work, while her body rebelled against the poison meant to save her life. When she finally stopped, she leaned against the car seat, breathing hard. "Sorry," she whispered. "Don't apologize." Daniel found napkins in the glove box and handed them to her. "The new protocol?" "Yeah, higher dose, supposed to be more effective." She laughed weakly. "Feels fantastic." "I bet." He drove the rest of the way carefully, avoiding bumps. At her building, he helped her upstairs. Evelyn collapsed on her couch, still shaking. "I should go," Daniel said. "Let you rest." "Stay." The word came out barely audible. "Just for a little while. I don't want to be alone right now." Daniel sat in the chair across from her. "Okay." They sat in silence as daylight faded and the city lights came on outside her windows. Evelyn's breathing gradually steadied. The trembling eased. After about an hour, she spoke. "My husband's name was Marcus. We met in graduate school. He was brilliant, quantum physics, completely over my head, but he made it sound like poetry." She stared at the ceiling. "We had 5 good years together. Then some drunk asshole ran a red light, and I got a phone call that ended everything." Daniel waited, giving her space to continue or stop. "Everyone expected me to fall apart," she said. "CEO's wife dies tragically. Company stocks plummet, the whole 9 yards. So I didn't. I went to the funeral, took 3 days off, and came back to work like nothing happened. Buried myself so deep in acquisitions and mergers that I didn't have time to feel anything." "Did it work?" For a while, then I got sick and suddenly I couldn't hide anymore. She turned her head to look at him. The cancer was a relief in a weird way. Finally, a legitimate reason to feel terrible all the time. That's the most depressing thing I've ever heard. Welcome to my therapy session. Feel free to bill me by the hour. Despite everything, Daniel smiled. Even sick and vulnerable, Evelyn had that sharp edge that refused to completely dull. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "You're going to anyway. Why did you really give me the Meridian project? The truth this time?" Evelyn was quiet for so long he thought she wasn't going to answer. Then, "Because I saw myself in you, standing in that parking garage, looking like you'd already given up. I knew that look because I'd seen it in my mirror every morning for 2 years." She sat up slowly, wincing. "And I thought maybe if I could pull you out of that hole, it would prove I wasn't completely drowning either. That's a lot of weight to put on a work project." "I know, but it was all I had to offer." She met his eyes. "I'm not good at the emotional support thing, Hayes. I don't do feelings well, but I can give someone purpose, give them a reason to get up in the morning. That I know how to do." "You've done more than that," Daniel said quietly, "whether you realize it or not." Something shifted in her expression, a crack in the armor she wore so carefully. "Stay for dinner. I'm not eating alone tonight." They ordered Chinese food because Evelyn could sometimes keep down noodles. Daniel told her about Emma's upcoming school play, about his improving relationship with Jennifer, about learning to balance everything without constantly feeling like he was failing. Evelyn talked about the Meridian deal, about board politics, about the delicate dance of running a company while secretly dying. "Do you ever think about quitting?" Daniel asked. "Taking time to focus on getting better?" "Every day. But if I step down, even temporarily, I lose control. The board will install someone else, and I'll never get my position back." She twirled lo mein around her fork. "This company is all I have left. Without it, I'm just a sick woman waiting to die." "You're more than your job." "Am I?" "What else do I have, Daniel? No husband, no kids, no family to speak of. My parents died years ago. I built this empire because it was the only thing that made me feel like my life meant something. Your life means something because you're in it, not because of what you've built." That's a nice sentiment, doesn't make it true. They finished dinner as night settled fully over the city. Daniel cleaned up the takeout containers while Evelyn dozed on the couch. When he was about to leave, she opened her eyes. "Same time next week?" she asked. "I'll be here." "You don't have to keep doing this." "I know." "Then why?" Daniel thought about his father, alone in a hospital room because he'd pushed everyone away. Thought about himself sitting in an empty apartment convinced no one cared. Thought about Emma's drawing on his phone, stick figures holding hands. "Because everyone deserves someone in their corner," he said. "Even you." The next Thursday, Evelyn looked marginally better. The week after that, worse. The treatment was unpredictable. Some sessions knocked her flat for days, others she bounced back from quickly. Daniel adjusted his schedule around her needs, learned which foods she could tolerate, which days to push, and which days to just sit quietly. At work, the Meridian project entered its critical phase. The pharmaceutical merger was happening. The regulatory approvals were falling into place, and Daniel's team was executing flawlessly. Evelyn pushed him hard. Endless revisions, detailed questions, demands for perfection. But now he understood it wasn't cruelty. It was her way of maintaining normalcy, of pretending the cancer wasn't slowly eating away at her body. November 15th arrived faster than Daniel expected. Emma's school play. He left work at 6, made it to the school with 20 minutes to spare, and found a seat in the third row. Jennifer waved from across the auditorium where she sat with her sister. The play was a mess. Kids forgetting lines, props falling over, one boy who picked his nose through his entire scene. Emma played a talking tree and delivered her 4 lines with fierce concentration. When she spotted Daniel in the audience, her whole face lit up. After the show, Emma ran to him and jumped into his arms. "Did you see me, Daddy? Did you see?" "I saw everything. You were the best tree in the whole forest." "I know." She hugged him tighter. "Can we get ice cream?" "Absolutely." Jennifer joined them in the lobby. "Hey, Daniel." "Hey, great show." She practiced those lines for 2 weeks straight. Jennifer smiled at Emma. "I'm proud of you, sweetie." "Daddy's taking me for ice cream." "Is Daddy now?" Jennifer raised an eyebrow at Daniel. "If that's okay with you." It's fine. Just have her back by 9. School night. They went for ice cream, Emma, Daniel, and surprisingly Jennifer, who decided to join them. They sat in a booth at the local shop while Emma demolished a sundae the size of her head and chattered nonstop about the play, her friends, her upcoming science project. She's happy, Jennifer said quietly, while Emma was distracted by her ice cream. Really happy. Whatever you're doing differently, keep doing it. I'm just trying to show up. It's working. She hesitated. I met someone. Nothing serious yet, but I wanted you to hear it from me. Daniel felt a pang. Not jealousy exactly, but something close to it. The final acknowledgement that they were really over, moving forward separately. I hope it goes well, he said, and meant it. Thanks. That means a lot. Jennifer glanced at Emma, who was now wearing more ice cream than she'd eaten. We're doing okay, aren't we? As co-parents. Yeah, we really are. Later, after dropping Emma back at Jennifer's and driving home, Daniel felt something he hadn't experienced in months. Contentment. Not happiness. That seemed too big, too presumptuous. But contentment. A sense that his life, while still complicated and messy, was heading in the right direction. His phone rang as he pulled into his parking space. Evelyn. Hayes. I need you to come over. Her voice was strained. Now. What's wrong? Just come, please. He drove to her apartment, breaking several traffic laws. Evelyn buzzed him up immediately. When she opened the door, her face was blotchy from crying. What happened? Daniel asked, stepping inside. I got my scan results today. She handed him a folder with trembling hands. The new protocol isn't working. The tumors are growing. Daniel read through the medical report, his stomach sinking with each line. The oncologist's notes were clinical and devastating. Disease progression, recommendation to consider palliative care options, discussion of quality of life versus aggressive treatment. What did your doctor say? He asked. That there's a trial. Experimental treatment. Only 10% of patients qualify, and the success rate is around 30%. She laughed bitterly. Great odds, right? Are you qualified? Barely. I'd need to start immediately. The side effects are worse than what I'm dealing with now, and there's no guarantee it'll work. She sank onto her couch. I'm so tired, Daniel. I'm tired of being sick, tired of fighting, tired of pretending everything's fine when I'm literally dying. Daniel sat beside her. What do you want to do? I don't know. Part of me wants to say, screw it, quit the trial, and just stop. Go somewhere warm, drink expensive wine, and wait for the end. She looked at him with red-rimmed eyes. But I'm terrified of dying, of everything I've built meaning nothing because I wasn't here to protect it. Your company will survive without you. That's not the question you need to answer. Then what is? Do you want to keep fighting? Evelyn closed her eyes. Tears slipped down her cheeks. I don't know how to stop fighting. It's all I've ever done. Then keep fighting. Try the trial. And this time you don't have to do it alone. Why do you care so much? Her voice broke. I'm just your boss. You barely know me. I know you well enough. Daniel took her hand, cold and fragile, in his. I know you're brilliant and stubborn and terrified. I know you push everyone away because you think needing people makes you weak. And I know that you saw me drowning and threw me a lifeline when you didn't have to. That was just a work project. No, it wasn't. It was you recognizing someone else's pain because you were carrying your own. And now I'm returning the favor. They sat in silence, hands clasped, while the city sparkled outside her windows. After a long time, Evelyn spoke. If I do the trial, I'll need help, real help. Someone to drive me to appointments, deal with the side effects, maybe even make medical decisions if I'm too sick. I'll do it. You don't know what you're signing up for. Neither do you, but we'll figure it out together. Evelyn looked at him searchingly. Why are you really doing this, Daniel? And don't give me the lifeline speech again. Daniel thought about Emma's drawing, about sitting in parking garages at 2 a.m. wondering if anyone would notice if he disappeared, about Evelyn standing in that same garage, seeing his pain when everyone else looked away. Because for the first time in a year, I feel like my life has purpose again, he said honestly. The Meridian Project, helping you, being a better father to Emma, all of it. You gave that back to me. So maybe this is selfish. Maybe I need you to keep fighting because it reminds me why I should keep fighting too. That's the most honest thing anyone said to me in years. You're welcome, she almost smiled. Okay, I'll do the trial. But Hayes? Yeah? If I die anyway, I'm going to be really pissed at you for making me go through with it. Fair enough? They spent the next hour going through the trial requirements, the schedule, the potential complications. The treatment would be intensive, 3 days a week for 6 weeks, then reassessment. The side effects included everything Evelyn was already experiencing, amplified. She'd likely need to step back from work, at least partially. The board will have questions, she said. I can't hide this much longer. Then don't. Tell them you're undergoing treatment and delegate some responsibilities. They'll see it as weakness. They'll see it as human. Daniel met her eyes. And if they try to push you out, they'll have to deal with me first. You're a project manager. What are you going to do? Bore them to death with spreadsheets? If necessary. This time she did smile, small and brief, but real. You're insane. You know that? I've been told. Daniel left around midnight with a plan in place. He'd attend the trial consultations with Evelyn, help coordinate her schedule, and take over some of the Meridian oversight to lighten her load. It was going to be brutal. He was going to have to work miracles to balance everything. But as he drove home through empty streets, Daniel felt something unexpected. Determination. Not the desperate kind that had fueled his workaholic tendencies before. Something steadier. Something that felt like hope. His phone buzzed with a text from Evelyn. Thank you for not running when I told you. Most people would have. Daniel typed back. I'm not most people, clearly. Get some sleep. We start this nightmare next week. Looking forward to it. Liar. He smiled at his phone and headed home, ready to fight whatever came next. The experimental trial started on a Monday that felt like stepping off a cliff. Daniel picked Evelyn up at 6 a.m., finding her already dressed and waiting in her building's lobby. She looked smaller somehow, wrapped in a cashmere coat that probably cost more than his car, her face pale but determined. You look like hell, she said, sliding into the passenger seat. Didn't sleep much. Neither did I. She fastened her seatbelt with shaking hands. I spent half the night reading the consent forms. Did you know there's a section about potential neurological damage? Seizures, memory loss, personality changes. Did you also read the part about the 30% success rate? 30% isn't exactly inspiring odds. It's better than zero. Daniel pulled into traffic. And you're the most stubborn person I've ever met. If anyone can beat those odds, it's you. Flattery won't make this less terrifying. I wasn't trying to flatter you. I was stating a fact. The research hospital was across town, a gleaming complex of glass and steel that screamed cutting-edge medicine. They checked in at the oncology research department where a nurse named Patricia greeted them with the kind of cheerfulness that felt rehearsed. Miss Cross, we're so excited to have you in the trial. And you must be her husband? Project manager, Daniel corrected automatically. Daniel Hayes. Oh, well, it's wonderful she has support. Patricia led them down a corridor lined with abstract art that probably cost more than most people's houses. The treatment takes about 4 hours. You're welcome to wait in the family area, Mr. Hayes. We have coffee, magazines, Wi-Fi. Evelyn glanced back at him, something unreadable in her expression. Fear, maybe. Or just the bone-deep exhaustion of someone who'd been fighting too long already. I'll be right here when you're done, Daniel said. She nodded once and disappeared through a set of double doors. The family waiting area was exactly what Patricia had promised. Comfortable chairs, bad coffee, magazines from 3 months ago. Daniel settled in with his laptop and tried to focus on work. The Meridian project was entering final regulatory approval, which meant endless documentation review and stakeholder management. He answered emails, revised timelines, coordinated with Patterson on compound testing results. But his mind kept drifting to Evelyn somewhere beyond those doors, hooked up to machines pumping experimental drugs into her body. Drugs that might save her or might destroy what was left of her quality of life. A gamble with stakes so high they didn't bear thinking about. His phone buzzed. Jennifer, how's it going? Daniel stared at the message. He hadn't told Jennifer the specifics, just that his boss was dealing with a health crisis and needed support. But Jennifer had always been perceptive, reading between the lines of what he didn't say. Long day. She's in treatment now. You're a good person for doing this. A lot of people wouldn't. She'd do the same for me. Would she, though? Daniel thought about that. Would Evelyn drop everything to help someone else? A month ago, he would have said no. The Ice Queen CEO, who valued results over relationships. But now he knew better. She'd helped him when he was drowning in her own difficult way, given him purpose when he had none, saw his pain when everyone else looked away. Yeah, she would. Jennifer sent back a heart emoji, which felt like a minor miracle in their post-divorce relationship. 4 hours crawled by like 4 days. Daniel worked, paced, drank terrible coffee, and tried not to think about all the ways this could go wrong. Other families came and went, some crying, some laughing, all of them carrying the weight of someone they loved fighting invisible battles. Finally, Patricia appeared. "Mr. Hayes, she's asking for you." Daniel followed her through the double doors into a recovery area with curtained-off bays. Evelyn lay on a hospital bed looking worse than he'd ever seen her, gray-faced, trembling, an IV still in her arm. But her eyes were open and alert. "Hey," Daniel said, pulling a chair close to the bed. "Hey," her voice came out rough. That was unpleasant. Scale of 1 to 10? 15. She tried to smile and failed. "They said the first treatment is always the hardest. Your body doesn't know what's happening yet. How are you feeling right now?" "Like someone filled my veins with battery acid and then beat me with a hammer." She closed her eyes. "The nausea is worse than the regular chemo, and I'm dizzy. Everything keeps spinning." A nurse came by to check her vitals and remove the IV. "You did great, Ms. Cross. We'll see you Wednesday, same time. Remember to stay hydrated and eat small meals even if you're not hungry. The anti-nausea medication should help, but call if anything feels wrong." After the nurse left, Daniel helped Evelyn sit up slowly. She swayed, and he caught her elbow. "I've got you." "I know." They made it to the car without incident, though Evelyn had to stop twice to catch her breath. Daniel drove carefully, avoiding bumps, taking turns slowly. Halfway to her apartment, Evelyn spoke. "I need to tell the board." "Now? You just finished treatment." "They're meeting tomorrow to discuss Q4 projections. I have to be there, which means I need to explain why I look like death warmed over." She leaned her head against the window. "I've been putting it off, but there's no more room for denial." "What are you going to say?" "The truth. That I'm undergoing experimental cancer treatment. It's going to get worse before it gets better, and I need to delegate some executive functions." She laughed without humor. "They're going to love that. They're going to deal with it. You're the CEO. You set the terms." "That's not how corporate boards work. They smell weakness and they pounce." "Then don't show weakness. Show strength. You're fighting cancer and still running a billion-dollar company. That's not weak. That's superhuman." Evelyn turned to look at him. "When did you become a motivational speaker?" "When I started hanging around someone who refuses to give up no matter how hard things get." "I'm not a hero, Daniel. I'm just terrified of dying." "Those aren't mutually exclusive." At her apartment, Daniel helped her upstairs and got her settled on the couch with water, crackers, and the anti-nausea medication. Evelyn took the pills mechanically, her hands still shaking. "You should go," she said. "You've done enough for one day." "Do you want me to go?" She was quiet for a long moment. "No? Then I'm staying." They sat in silence while afternoon light slanted through her windows. Evelyn dozed fitfully, waking every 20 minutes looking disoriented. Daniel worked on his laptop, answering the endless stream of Meridian-related emails while keeping one eye on her. Around 6 p.m., she woke more fully and sat up slowly. "I need to eat something. The nurse said small meals." Daniel ordered soup from a place that delivered. While they waited, Evelyn pulled out her laptop and started drafting remarks for the board meeting. "What do you think about this?" She turned the screen toward him. "I want to be direct, but not dramatic." Daniel read through her notes. They were clinical, detached, the same tone she'd used to discuss quarterly earnings. "It's fine if you want to sound like a press release, but these are people who've worked with you for years. Maybe try being human." "I don't do human well in professional settings." "You're literally telling them you have cancer. I think being human is appropriate." Evelyn closed her laptop with a snap. "What would you say?" "I'd tell them the truth. That you're sick, that the treatment is brutal, that you need their support to keep the company running while you fight for your life. And I'd remind them that you've never failed them before, and you don't plan to start now." "That's terrifying." "Yeah, but it's honest." The soup arrived. Evelyn managed half a bowl before her stomach rebelled. Daniel cleaned up while she retreated to her bedroom to lie down. When he checked on her an hour later, she was asleep. Her face relaxed in a way it never was when she was awake. She looked younger like this. Vulnerable. Nothing like the Ice Queen CEO who struck fear into employees. Daniel left quietly, locking her door behind him and texting to check she'd set her alarm for the morning. Tuesday's board meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. Daniel arrived at the office early, nervous energy making it impossible to sit still. He had no idea how the board would react to Evelyn's announcement, whether they'd rally around her or see this as an opportunity to push for new leadership. At 8:45, Evelyn emerged from her office dressed in a navy suit that probably disguised how much weight she'd lost. Her makeup was flawless, hiding the worst of the pallor. She looked like the CEO everyone knew, poised, powerful, untouchable. But Daniel saw the tremor in her hands, the way she gripped her briefcase too tightly, the fear hiding behind those ice-blue eyes. "You've got this," he said quietly as she passed his desk. She paused. "Come with me." "To the board meeting? You're the lead on Meridian. It makes sense for you to present the project update." Her expression dared him to argue. "And I need someone in that room who's on my side." The boardroom was on the top floor, all windows and expensive furniture. 12 board members sat around a massive table, mostly men in their 50s and 60s, a few women who'd clawed their way to power through decades of proving themselves. They looked up when Evelyn entered, their expressions ranging from curious to calculating. "Good morning." Evelyn took her seat at the head of the table. "Before we begin with quarterly projections, I have an announcement that affects company planning going forward." The room went silent. Daniel sat in a chair against the wall, technically there to observe, but really there to provide moral support. Evelyn took a breath. 18 months ago, I was diagnosed with stage 3 ovarian cancer. I've been undergoing treatment while maintaining my executive responsibilities. Yesterday, I began an experimental trial with more intensive side effects. I'm telling you this now because I'll need to adjust my schedule and delegate certain functions to ensure the company continues operating smoothly. The silence stretched. Then Marcus Chen, head of the compensation committee, spoke. "Why are we only hearing about this now?" "Because I wasn't ready to disclose it. Now I am." Evelyn's voice was steady. "I understand this raises questions about leadership continuity. I'm prepared to discuss transition plans if the board feels they're necessary." "Transition plans?" Richard Walsh, the oldest board member, leaned forward. "You're talking about stepping down?" "I'm talking about being realistic. This treatment is aggressive. There will be days I can't be in the office. But I have full confidence in my executive team to handle day-to-day operations." Another board member, Sarah Kim, CFO of a pharmaceutical competitor, spoke up. "What's your prognosis?" 30% success rate with the experimental protocol. Without it, 12 to 18 months. Daniel watched the board members process this information. Some looked genuinely concerned. Others looked like they were already calculating political angles. "The Meridian merger," Walsh said. "That's at a critical stage. Can you still oversee it?" "I've delegated primary oversight to Daniel Hayes. He's been managing the project exceptionally well." Evelyn gestured toward Daniel. "He's prepared to present the current status." All eyes turned to Daniel. He stood, pulled up the presentation on the main screen, and walked them through regulatory approvals, timeline adjustments, stakeholder management. He'd done this presentation a dozen times in smaller meetings, but never with 12 board members scrutinizing his every word. "The FDA approval is on track for January," Daniel concluded. "Barring any major complications, the merger finalizes in March. We're ahead of schedule and under budget." "Impressive work," Kim said. Then to Evelyn, "You've delegated well, but a CEO's role extends beyond project management. What about strategic planning, board communications, investor relations?" "I'll continue handling those functions with support from the executive team. If my health deteriorates to the point where I can't fulfill my duties, I'll inform you immediately." Evelyn's voice hardened slightly. "But I'm not dead yet, and I don't plan to hand over control while I'm still capable of leading." "No one's suggesting you should," Walsh said, though his tone suggested otherwise. "We're simply being prudent about succession planning." The meeting continued for another hour, covering quarterly projections and strategic initiatives. But the cancer announcement hung over everything, unspoken but omnipresent. When they finally adjourned, several board members approached Evelyn with varying degrees of genuine concern and political posturing. Daniel waited until the room cleared. Evelyn stood at the window overlooking the city, her shoulders tight with tension. "That went better than I expected," she said without turning around. "Walsh is going to be a problem." "Walsh has been a problem since Marcus died. He wanted the CEO position and never forgave me for getting it instead." She turned to face Daniel. "But he can't do anything as long as I'm performing, which means I need to keep performing, cancer or not." "That's insane. That's business." She grabbed her briefcase. "Come on, I need to prep for the investor call at 2. The next 3 weeks were brutal. Evelyn underwent treatment Monday, Wednesday, Friday, each session leaving her increasingly ravaged. But Tuesday and Thursday, she was in the office at 7 a.m., running meetings, making decisions, maintaining the illusion of complete control. Daniel watched her push through exhaustion that would have hospitalized most people, fueled by sheer stubborn will and terror of losing her company. He juggled Meridian oversight, his regular responsibilities, and increasingly complex coordination of Evelyn's schedule. Made sure she ate, reminded her to take medications, drove her home when she was too shaky to drive herself. Emma noticed the long hours returning. "Daddy, you're always tired now." They sat at his kitchen table, Emma working on math homework while Daniel reviewed regulatory documents on his laptop. "I know, sweetheart, my boss is sick, so I'm helping her with extra work. Is she going to die?" The bluntness of the question hit Daniel like a punch. "I don't know. The doctors are trying to help her get better." "Like when Grandpa was sick?" "Yeah, kind of like that." Emma chewed on her pencil. "Grandpa died." "He did." "I don't want your boss to die." "Then you'll be sad again." Daniel closed his laptop and pulled Emma onto his lap. "I might be sad, but I'll still be here for you, no matter what. That's a promise." "Okay." She hugged him tight. "Can we have pancakes for dinner?" "Absolutely." That night, after Emma was asleep, Daniel sat on his couch staring at nothing. He was getting too close to this. To Evelyn. The line between professional obligation and genuine care had blurred weeks ago, and he wasn't sure when it happened. Somewhere between holding her hair while she vomited and sitting with her through long silences, the CEO had become a person he actually gave a damn about. His phone buzzed. "Evelyn. Can't sleep. Everything hurts. Did you take the pain medication? Makes me fuzzy. I have a presentation tomorrow. Take half a dose. You need rest more than you need to be sharp at 8 a.m. A long pause. Then, "Fine. But if I screw up the presentation, I'm blaming you. I'll take full responsibility." "You always do. It's annoying. Go to sleep, Evelyn." Bossy. December arrived with early snow and Emma's 6th birthday. Daniel had promised her a party. Nothing elaborate, just a few friends at a trampoline park. But the week before, Evelyn's treatment hit harder than usual. She called Daniel at 2 a.m. from her bathroom floor, too weak to stand, terrified she was dying. He broke every speed limit getting to her apartment. Found her exactly where she'd said, curled on the bathroom tile, shaking so hard her teeth chattered. Her fever was 103. "Hospital, now!" "No hospitals." Her voice came out barely a whisper. "They'll admit me. The board will find out. Evelyn, you need medical attention." "Please." She grabbed his hand. "Just help me. Please." Daniel called her oncologist, who talked him through checking her vitals and administering medications. The fever broke around 5 a.m. By 6, Evelyn was sleeping fitfully in her bed while Daniel dozed in a chair nearby, too wired to actually rest. When his alarm went off at 7, he had 3 missed calls from Jennifer and a text. "Emma's birthday party setup is today. Are you still available to help?" Daniel looked at Evelyn, still asleep, her face peaceful for the first time in hours. Then at his phone. At the choice between the woman fighting for her life and his daughter's 6th birthday. There was no choice. He texted Jennifer, "I'll be there. Give me an hour." Daniel left Evelyn a note, made sure she had water and medication within reach, and drove home to shower and change. At 9 a.m., he met Jennifer at the trampoline park to set up decorations. She took one look at him and frowned. "You look terrible." "Long night. My boss had a rough reaction to treatment." "Daniel, you can't keep doing this. You're going to burn out." "I'm fine." "You're not fine. You're running yourself into the ground trying to save someone who's not your responsibility. She's my friend." Jennifer's expression softened. I know, but you have a daughter who needs you too, and you can't be there for Emma if you're collapsing from exhaustion. I'm managing both. Are you? Really? Jennifer hung a birthday banner. Because from where I'm standing, you're heading for the same place you were before the divorce. Working yourself to death, neglecting your own needs, pretending everything's fine when it's clearly not. This is different. How? Daniel wanted to argue, but the words wouldn't come. Because maybe Jennifer was right. Maybe he was falling into old patterns, just with different justification. Except this time, he actually cared about the person he was helping. This time, it wasn't about hiding from his problems. It was about genuinely not wanting someone to face death alone. I care about her, he said quietly. More than I probably should. Jennifer studied his face. More than a boss? I don't know. Maybe. It's complicated. Life usually is. Jennifer touched his arm gently. Just be careful. I don't want to see you get hurt again. The party was chaos. 10 6-year-olds hopped up on sugar and adrenaline, bouncing off walls, literally. Emma had the time of her life, dragging Daniel onto trampolines and into foam pits. For 3 hours, he forgot about cancer and experimental trials and board meetings, just existed in the moment with his daughter's laughter echoing around him. Afterward, driving Emma home, she chattered nonstop about the party. Best birthday ever, Daddy. I'm glad you had fun, sweetheart. Is your boss going to be okay? The question came out of nowhere. Daniel glanced in the rearview mirror. I hope so. Me too, because you smile more now, even when you're tired. That night, after dropping Emma at Jennifer's, Daniel drove to Evelyn's apartment. She answered the door looking marginally better. Still pale, still weak, but upright. You came back. Of course I did. You didn't have to. I know it's your daughter's birthday. Party's over. She had a great time. Daniel stepped inside. How are you feeling? Like I got hit by a truck, reversed over and hit again, but I'm alive. She moved carefully to the couch. I'm sorry about last night. I panicked. Don't apologize for being sick. I should have gone to the hospital. Probably, but I understand why you didn't. Daniel sat across from her. How much longer can you keep doing this? The trial? 4 more weeks. Then they reassess. That's not what I meant. How much longer can you keep pretending you're fine when you're clearly not? Evelyn's mask slipped. Underneath was raw exhaustion and fear. I don't know how to not be in control, Daniel. If I admit I'm dying, then I'm giving up. And I can't give up. Not when there's still a chance. Admitting you need help isn't giving up. In my world, it is. Then your world is wrong. They sat in heavy silence. Outside, snow began falling, dusting the city in white. Evelyn watched the snow with an expression Daniel couldn't read. What would you do? She asked quietly. If you were me? I'd tell the board I need medical leave. I'd focus on getting better instead of killing myself trying to prove I'm still capable of running a company. And if the board replaces me while I'm gone, then they replace you. At least you'd still be alive. Being alive isn't worth much if I lose everything I've built. Daniel leaned forward. What exactly have you built, Evelyn? A company? Great. Companies exist to make money. When you're gone, someone else will run it and the world will keep spinning. But you, the actual person, not the CEO, what have you built in your life that matters? Her face went hard. That's cruel. It's honest. You're so terrified of losing control that you can't see what you're actually losing. Time. Days you could spend doing something other than working yourself to death in an office. People you could connect with. Experiences you'll never get back. I don't have people. I don't have experiences. I have my company. You have me. The words hung in the air between them. Evelyn stared at him like he'd spoken a foreign language. You have me, Daniel repeated. And whether you want to admit it or not, that's something. We're friends. Maybe more than friends at this point. And I'm telling you as someone who cares about you, not as your employee, as your friend, you need to let people in before it's too late. I don't know how. Start by being honest about what you want. I want to not die. I want my company to succeed. She trailed off, tears welling up. I want to not be alone anymore. I'm so tired of being alone. Daniel moved to sit beside her on the couch. Without thinking, he put his arm around her shoulders. Evelyn leaned into him, and suddenly she was crying, real broken sobs that shook her entire frame. "I'm scared," she whispered against his shoulder. "I'm so scared, Daniel." "I know. What if the trial doesn't work? What if I go through all this and I die anyway?" "Then you die having fought as hard as you could. But you don't die alone. I promise you that." She cried until there were no tears left, until she was just shaking silently in his arms. Daniel held her, this woman who terrified boardrooms and commanded empires, and saw her for what she really was, human, fragile, terrified of the dark that was coming for her. When she finally pulled back, her face was blotchy and her carefully applied makeup was ruined. "I must look terrible." "You look real." "That bad, huh?" She attempted a smile. "Thank you. For being here, for everything." "You don't have to thank me." "Yes, I do. You could have walked away months ago. Most people would have." "I'm not most people." "No, you're really not." Evelyn wiped her face with the back of her hand. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest." "Okay. What is this between us? Because it's not just professional anymore, and we both know it." Daniel's heart pounded. He'd been avoiding this question even to himself, but she deserved honesty. "I don't know exactly what this is," he admitted, "but I know that somewhere between parking garages and cancer treatments, you became one of the most important people in my life. I think about you constantly. I worry about you. And when I imagine a future, you're in it. So whatever this is, it matters. You matter." Evelyn searched his face. "I can't promise you a future, Daniel. I might not have one. I'm not asking for promises. I'm just asking you to let me be here, for however long we have." She kissed him. It was sudden and desperate and tasted like tears. Daniel kissed her back, his hand cupping her face, feeling the rapid beat of her pulse under his thumb. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathing hard. "This is complicated," Evelyn said. "Everything worth having is complicated. I'm your boss. I don't care. I'm dying. You're fighting. There's a difference." Daniel rested his forehead against hers. "And I want to fight with you. If you'll let me." Evelyn closed her eyes. "This is insane. Probably. We're going to get hurt. Maybe. But we're already hurting. At least this way we hurt together." She laughed. An actual laugh, not the bitter thing she usually produced. "That's the worst romantic logic I've ever heard. You're dating a project manager. Romance isn't my strong suit." "Dating?" Her eyebrow arched. "Is that what we're doing?" "I have no idea what we're doing, but I'd like to find out." They sat together on her couch as snow fell outside and the city lights flickered on below. For the first time in months, the future didn't seem quite so dark. Still uncertain, still terrifying, but not dark, because whatever happened next, they wouldn't face it alone. The kiss changed everything and nothing. At work, Evelyn remained the demanding CEO, pushing Daniel and everyone else toward excellence with the same ruthless efficiency. But after hours, in the quiet of her apartment or his, the walls came down. They existed in a strange limbo between professional colleagues and something neither of them could quite name. Daniel didn't tell anyone at first. Not Jennifer, not Tom, not even Emma, when she asked why he smiled at his phone so much. The relationship felt too fragile, too precious to expose to outside scrutiny. And there was the complication of Evelyn's illness hanging over everything, each good day shadowed by the knowledge that bad ones were coming. The experimental trial continued its brutal march through December. Week 4 brought seizures, small ones at first, just momentary lapses where Evelyn's eyes would glaze and she'd lose several seconds. Daniel was with her when the first major one hit, her entire body convulsing while he held her on her side and timed it on his phone. 90 seconds that felt like hours. When she came back, confused and terrified, the first thing she said was, "Don't tell the board." "Evelyn, you had a seizure. You need to tell your doctor." "I will, but not the board. They'll use this as proof I'm incapable of leading." "You're incapable of leading right now. You can barely stand up." "Then help me stand." She tried to sit up and immediately fell back, exhausted. "Please, Daniel, I just need to get through 2 more weeks of treatment, then the reassessment. If the trial's working, I can ease back into full duties. If it's not..." She didn't finish the sentence. Daniel called her oncologist anyway. Dr. Reeves adjusted Evelyn's medication and ordered additional monitoring, but confirmed the seizures were a known side effect of the experimental protocol. Not pleasant, but not necessarily a sign the treatment was failing. Christmas approached with its usual commercial frenzy. Daniel had Emma for the holiday this year, which meant decorating his apartment and pretending he had energy for enthusiasm. Emma helped him put up a small tree, hanging ornaments she'd made in school, alongside the ones from before the divorce, remnants of a family that no longer existed. "Is Ms. Cross going to be alone for Christmas?" Emma asked, hanging a glitter-covered star. Daniel paused. He'd mentioned Evelyn to Emma in vague terms, his boss who was sick, someone he was helping. But Emma was perceptive beyond her years, picking up on the way Daniel's voice changed when he talked about her. "Probably," Daniel admitted. "She doesn't have much family." "That's sad. Nobody should be alone on Christmas." Emma looked at him with those serious brown eyes. "Can she come here?" "I don't think—" "Please, Daddy, we have extra cookies and everything." The image of Evelyn alone in her pristine apartment on Christmas Day made Daniel's chest ache. "Let me ask her, okay?" That evening, after putting Emma to bed, he texted Evelyn. "What are your plans for Christmas?" "Same as every year. Chinese food and catching up on work. Emma wants to know if you'd like to spend it with us." A long pause. Daniel watched the three dots appear and disappear several times. "That's incredibly sweet, but I don't want to intrude on your time with your daughter." "You wouldn't be intruding," she specifically asked. "Says nobody should be alone on Christmas." "Smart kid. So is that a yes?" Another pause. "Are you sure?" "I'm not exactly festive company these days, I'm sure. Come over around noon. Fair warning, there will be pancakes and Christmas movies and probably too much sugar. Sounds terrible. I'll be there." Christmas morning arrived with Emma bouncing on Daniel's bed at 6 a.m., demanding they open presents immediately. They compromised on 7, sitting by the small tree while Emma tore through wrapping paper with single-minded intensity. She'd asked for art supplies and science kits, and Daniel had delivered both plus a few books she'd mentioned wanting. "This is the best Christmas ever," Emma declared, already covered in glitter from a craft set. "Better than last year?" She considered this seriously. "Last year you and Mommy were sad and trying to pretend you weren't. This year you're actually happy. So yeah, better." The observation hit Daniel harder than it should have. Emma was right. Last Christmas had been a disaster of forced cheer and unspoken resentment, Jennifer and him going through the motions for Emma's sake while their marriage crumbled around them. This year was simpler, smaller, but real. At noon, Evelyn arrived carrying a bag of presents and looking nervous. She dressed casually, jeans and a sweater, but still managed to look more put together than most people did in formal wear. The cancer had stolen weight from her frame, making her sharp features even more pronounced, but she'd covered the worst of the pallor with makeup. Emma answered the door. "Hi, Ms. Cross. Merry Christmas." "Merry Christmas, Emma. You can call me Evelyn if you want." "Okay." Emma grabbed Evelyn's hand and dragged her inside. "Come see what Daddy got me." Daniel watched Evelyn being pulled into his daughter's orbit, seeing something in her expression he'd never witnessed before. Genuine warmth. Not the professional smile she used in meetings or the tired affection she showed him. This was different, softer. They made pancakes together, Emma insisting on helping despite getting batter everywhere. Evelyn surprised Daniel by being good with kids, patient when Emma asked a million questions, enthusiastic about the glitter projects taking over the kitchen table, willing to watch animated movies without complaint. "I didn't know you liked children," Daniel said quietly, while Emma was absorbed in building something with new Legos. "I don't, usually. Too unpredictable." Evelyn watched Emma with an unreadable expression. "But she's easy to like. Smart, curious, honest. Reminds me of someone." "Who?" "Me. Before I learned to be guarded about everything." She turned to look at him. "You're raising a good human, Daniel." "I'm trying." "You're succeeding." Later, after Emma had crashed from sugar overload and was napping on the couch, Daniel and Evelyn sat in the kitchen drinking coffee. "Thank you for inviting me," Evelyn said. "I didn't realize how much I needed this until I was here." "Needed what?" "Glitter in your hair and cartoon movies? Normalcy. A reminder that life exists outside hospitals and boardrooms." She picked at a stray piece of wrapping paper on the table. "I haven't celebrated Christmas since Marcus died. Didn't see the point. But today was nice. Just nice? Fine, it was wonderful. Happy? Very. Daniel covered her hand with his. How are you feeling? Really? Tired, nauseous, the usual. She squeezed his hand, but better than I would have been alone in my apartment eating General Tso's chicken. Emma stirred on the couch, blinking sleepily. Evelyn? Will you read me a story? Evelyn looked surprised, but nodded. Sure. Daniel watched them curl up together on the couch. Emma pressed against Evelyn's side while she read from a book about a girl who built rockets. Evelyn's voice was gentle, patient, nothing like her boardroom tone. And Emma looked completely content, like this was the most natural thing in the world. Something shifted in Daniel's chest. A recognition that this, whatever this was between him and Evelyn, had already grown beyond what he'd intended. She wasn't just the woman he was helping through cancer. She was becoming part of his life, part of Emma's life. That terrified him almost as much as the possibility of losing her. After Evelyn left that evening, Emma was quiet while Daniel cleaned up. Finally, she spoke. I like her, Daddy. I like her too. Are you going to marry her? Daniel nearly dropped the plate he was washing. Where did that come from? You look at her the way Prince Charming looks at Cinderella in the movie. All mushy. Emma wrinkled her nose. It's gross, but also kind of nice. It's complicated, Em. Evelyn's very sick. We don't know if she's going to get better. But you want to marry her? Did he? The question caught Daniel off guard. Marriage felt impossible. Evelyn was his boss. She was fighting cancer. They'd known each other less than 6 months. But when he imagined a future, she was in it. Taking care of her had somehow become the most important thing in his life, besides Emma. I don't know, he said honestly. Maybe. If things were different. Things are always different, Daddy. That's what Mommy says. You just have to decide if you want someone anyway. Out of the mouths of 6-year-olds. The day after Christmas, Evelyn had her final experimental treatment. Daniel picked her up at dawn, finding her already dressed and waiting. She looked thinner than ever, her face gaunt, but there was determination in her eyes. Last one, she said, buckling her seatbelt. How do you feel? Like I've been poisoned for 6 weeks straight, but hopeful. Is that stupid? No, hope's never stupid. The treatment went like all the others. 4 hours of sitting with drugs being pumped into her body while Daniel waited. But this time felt different. Final. Either the protocol had worked or it hadn't. Either the tumors were shrinking or they weren't. 2 weeks from now, they'd know. When Evelyn emerged, she looked worse than usual, gray-faced and trembling, barely able to walk. Daniel got her to the car and started driving to her apartment. Wait, Evelyn said. Don't take me home. Where do you want to go? Anywhere. I've spent 6 weeks going between the hospital and my apartment and work. I just want to be somewhere different. Daniel drove to the waterfront, parking near a pier where boats bobbed in the cold December water. They sat in the car watching seagulls wheel overhead and people walk dogs along the beach. When I was a kid, Evelyn said quietly, my dad used to take me to the ocean every summer. We'd rent this tiny cottage in Maine and spend 2 weeks doing absolutely nothing, just walking the beach, reading books, eating too much ice cream. She smiled at the memory. I thought it was boring then. Now I'd give anything to have that again. What happened to your parents? Car accident. Same one that made me terrified of driving for years. She watched the water. I was 19. They were coming to visit me at college, and a truck driver fell asleep at the wheel, hit them head on. They died instantly. I'm sorry. Me too. They would have liked you. She turned to look at him. Dad was practical, grounded. Mom was stubborn and fierce. You've got qualities of both. Is that a compliment? Don't let it go to your head. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the water until Evelyn dozed off. Daniel let her sleep, grateful she was getting rest, even if it was in a car seat. When she finally woke an hour later, the sun was setting, painting the sky orange and pink. This is nice, she murmured. Thank you. For what? For knowing what I needed before I did. New Year's Eve brought the Meridian merger to its final stage. The regulatory approvals were complete, the stakeholder agreement signed, the timeline executed flawlessly. It was the professional triumph Daniel had been working toward for months. But all he could think about was Evelyn's scan scheduled for January 3rd. She'd been quieter since the final treatment, more withdrawn. The side effects were tapering off, her body slowly recovering from the chemical assault. But the fear was growing, the knowledge that soon they'd have answers, and those answers might be devastating. They spent New Year's Eve at Evelyn's apartment, too exhausted for parties or celebrations. At midnight, they watched fireworks from her window while drinking sparkling cider because alcohol interfered with her medications. "New Year," Evelyn said as the sky exploded in color. "Think it'll be better than the last one?" "Hard to imagine it being worse." "Fair point." She leaned against him. "What do you want this year?" "For you to be healthy, for Emma to stay happy, for the Meridian deal to actually close without last-minute disasters." Daniel paused. "What about you?" "I want to live." The words came out simple and devastating. "I want to wake up on January 4th and hear my doctor say the tumors are gone. I want to not be afraid every single day that I'm dying." "You're going to live. I know you are." "You can't know that." "No, but I can believe it, and I do." Evelyn turned to face him, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "What if I don't? What if the scan shows the cancer's spread and I have months instead of years? Then we make those months count." "But Evelyn, you can't live like you're already dead. That's not living. That's just waiting." "I don't know how to do anything else anymore." "Yes, you do. You did it on Christmas. You did it just now watching fireworks." Daniel cupped her face in his hands. "You're more than your fear. You're more than your cancer. And whatever happens, I'm not going anywhere." She kissed him then, desperate and urgent, like she was trying to prove she was still alive. Daniel kissed her back, his hands tangling in her hair, feeling the rapid beat of her heart against his chest. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Evelyn rested her forehead against his. "I love you," she whispered. "I didn't mean to. I tried not to. But I do." Daniel's world tilted. "Evelyn, you don't have to say it back. I know this is complicated and terrifying and probably a terrible idea, but I needed you to know, in case—" She didn't finish. "In case nothing." Daniel lifted her chin so she had to meet his eyes. "I love you too. Have for a while now. I was just too scared to admit it. We're both idiots." "Probably." They spent New Year's night tangled together on her couch, watching bad movies and pretending the scan wasn't looming over them. At some point, Evelyn fell asleep with her head on Daniel's shoulder, her breathing steady and even. Daniel stayed awake, memorizing the moment, the weight of her against him, the city lights flickering outside, the sense that despite everything, he'd found something worth holding on to. January 3rd arrived too quickly. Daniel picked Evelyn up at 7 a.m. for her scan appointment. She was quiet during the drive, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Whatever the results are," Daniel said, "we deal with them together, okay?" "Okay." The scan itself was routine. Lie still in a machine while it took pictures of your insides, trying not to think about what those pictures might show. Daniel waited in the too-bright room with its outdated magazines and terrible coffee, counting minutes that felt like hours. When Evelyn finally emerged, her face was unreadable. "Results in 48 hours, she said. "Dr. Reeves wants to review them thoroughly before our appointment. 2 more days of not knowing. 2 more days of existing in limbo between hope and devastation." They went to work because neither of them could stand sitting at home waiting. The Meridian merger was officially closing that afternoon. Contracts signed, money transferred, a deal Daniel had poured months of his life into finally complete. The executive team gathered for champagne and congratulations. Evelyn made a speech about excellence and teamwork that hit all the right notes, but Daniel saw the tremor in her hands. The way her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. She was terrified, and nobody else seemed to notice. After the celebration, Evelyn called Daniel into her office and closed the door. "I need to tell you something," she said without preamble. "If the scan results are bad, if the cancer's spread, I'm not doing more treatment." "Evelyn, let me finish. I've spent 6 weeks being poisoned. I've lost 30 pounds, had seizures, couldn't keep food down for days at a time. If this didn't work, I'm not putting myself through that again just to buy a few more months." Her voice was steady, determined. "I'll do palliative care, make myself comfortable, but I'm done fighting if the fight is pointless." Daniel felt like the floor had dropped out from under him. You can't just give up. It's not giving up. It's choosing quality over quantity. She met his eyes. I need you to respect that choice, Daniel, even if you don't agree with it. And if I can't, then we figure it out. But this is my decision to make. My body, my life. They stood in tense silence, the space between them suddenly feeling vast. I won't stop fighting for you, Daniel said finally, even if you stop fighting for yourself. That's what I'm afraid of. The next 2 days were torture. Daniel threw himself into work, into Emma, into anything that would keep his mind from spiraling. But every quiet moment, the fear crept back in. What if the scan showed the cancer had spread? What if Evelyn meant it about stopping treatment? What if he'd fallen in love with someone he was going to lose anyway? Emma noticed his distraction. Daddy, you're sad again. Just worried about Evelyn. She gets her test results tomorrow. The ones that say if she's getting better? Yeah. Emma thought about this seriously. I'll say a special wish for her tonight. Mom says wishes don't always come true, but sometimes they do. Daniel hugged his daughter tight, wishing he had her certainty that things could work out. January 5th dawned cold and gray. Daniel met Evelyn at Dr. Reeves's office, his stomach in knots. They sat in the waiting room, holding hands, not talking, just existing in the last moments before their lives changed one way or another. Finally, a nurse called them back. Dr. Reeves sat behind her desk, Evelyn's scan results pulled up on her computer screen. Her expression was professionally neutral, the kind doctors learn to hide behind when delivering difficult news. Ms. Cross, Mr. Hayes, thank you for coming in. Dr. Reeves folded her hands on her desk. I've reviewed your scan results multiple times, and I have to say, this is not what I expected. Daniel's heart stopped. Evelyn's hand tightened painfully around his. The experimental protocol worked better than we hoped. Your tumors have shrunk by 63%. The largest mass in your left ovary is nearly gone. The ones in your lymph nodes have reduced significantly. Dr. Reeves smiled, a real smile. You're in partial remission, Evelyn. This is extraordinary progress. The room spun. Daniel heard Evelyn make a sound, half laugh, half sob. He couldn't process what he was hearing. Partial remission. The tumors were shrinking. She wasn't dying. Not right now. Not yet. What does this mean? Evelyn's voice shook. For treatment going forward, we continue monitoring closely. Monthly scans for the next 6 months, then quarterly if things remain stable. There's still cancer present, so we're not out of the woods. But this is the best possible outcome from the trial. Dr. Reeves leaned forward. You fought hard, and it paid off. Be proud of that. They left the doctor's office in a daze, made it to Daniel's car before Evelyn completely broke down, sobbing so hard she could barely breathe. Daniel held her, his own tears falling into her hair. I'm not dying, she kept saying. I'm not dying. No, you're not. They sat in the parking lot until Evelyn cried herself out, then drove to her apartment in silence. Inside, Evelyn collapsed on her couch, looking wrung out, but lighter somehow. Like a weight she'd been carrying for 18 months had finally lifted. I don't know what to do now, she admitted. I've been preparing to die for so long. I don't know how to prepare to live. You take it one day at a time, same as everyone else. I'm not everyone else? No. You're the woman who beat the odds even when they were stacked against you. Daniel sat beside her. You get to decide what your life looks like now. No more survival mode. No more just getting through the day. You actually get to live. Evelyn looked at him, something shifting in her expression. I want different things now. Things I didn't think I could want. Like what? Like a life outside work. Like someone to share things with. Like... She paused, seeming to gather courage. Like maybe finding out what this is between us, without cancer hanging over everything. Daniel's heart raced. Is that what you want? I think so. But Daniel, I come with complications. A company to run, health issues that aren't going away completely, emotional walls I've built over decades. She took his hand. I'm not an easy person to be with. Neither am I. I've got a daughter, an ex-wife, and more baggage than anyone should reasonably carry. He smiled. But I think we've already proven we can handle complicated. This would be different. This would be real. It's already real. Has been for a while. Evelyn studied his face like she was memorizing it. I need time to process this, to figure out what I want my life to look like now that I might actually have one. Is that okay? Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. You say that now. I mean it. Daniel lifted her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles. You survived cancer, Evelyn. I think I can survive waiting for you to figure things out. She smiled, a real one that reached her eyes. You're annoyingly patient, you know that? Someone has to be. You're annoyingly stubborn. They spent the rest of the day just existing together. No big declarations, no dramatic moments, just two people who'd found each other in the worst circumstances figuring out how to exist in better ones. When Daniel finally left that evening, Evelyn walked him to the door. Thank you, she said quietly, for not giving up on me, even when I'd given up on myself. Thank you for letting me in, even when every instinct told you not to. She kissed him goodbye, soft and sweet and full of possibility, and for the first time in months, the future didn't feel terrifying. It felt like something worth looking forward to. Daniel drove home with hope sitting light in his chest, ready to see what came next. The weeks after Evelyn's diagnosis became a strange kind of limbo. Better than before, but still uncertain. Partial remission wasn't a cure. The cancer was still there, lurking in reduced form, waiting for any opportunity to return. Monthly scans became the markers by which they measured time, each one bringing fresh anxiety and relief in equal measure. Evelyn threw herself into reclaiming her life with the same intensity she'd brought to fighting cancer. She returned to full-time CEO duties, much to the board's relief and Richard Walsh's obvious disappointment. The Meridian merger's success had silenced most of her critics, and her illness had become an open secret that people referenced carefully, like mentioning a war veteran's injury, acknowledged but not dwelled upon. But something fundamental had shifted in how Evelyn approached work. She left at reasonable hours, delegated more, actually took weekends off. The executive team adapted with varying degrees of confusion and relief. You're different, Rita observed one Friday afternoon as Evelyn packed up her laptop at 5:30. Good different or bad different? Just different. Less terrifying, maybe. Though still plenty intimidating. Evelyn smiled. I'll take that as progress. The relationship with Daniel evolved slowly, carefully, like two people learning to trust that good things could actually last. They kept it private at work. No public displays, no obvious favoritism. Daniel had been promoted to senior project manager after Meridian's success, which helped deflect accusations of impropriety. But everyone who paid attention could see the way Evelyn's expression softened when Daniel entered a room, the way his eyes tracked her movements like he was constantly making sure she was okay. Emma became the unexpected bridge between Evelyn's two worlds. She'd taken to Evelyn immediately, with the uncomplicated affection of children who haven't learned to be guarded. Once a week, Evelyn joined them for dinner at Daniel's apartment. Casual evenings full of Emma's chatter about school and Evelyn's dry observations about corporate politics simplified for 6-year-old consumption. So the board is like the mean kids who try to tell you what to do at recess? Emma asked one evening over pizza. Essentially, yes, Evelyn confirmed. Except they wear expensive suits and use bigger words. That sounds annoying. It frequently is. Jennifer noticed the change in Daniel during one of their co-parenting handoffs. Emma had run inside to grab a forgotten stuffed animal, leaving them alone on the doorstep. You look happy, Jennifer said. Really happy. Not just going through the motions happy. I am. Things are good. Is it serious? With your boss? Daniel hesitated, then nodded. Yeah, it is. Good. You deserve that. Jennifer smiled, and it was genuine. Emma likes her, which is saying something. She's usually pretty skeptical of adults. Evelyn's good with her. Patient in a way I didn't expect. Just be careful, okay? I know she was sick. Is she? She's in remission. Partial, but stable. We're taking it one day at a time. Jennifer squeezed his arm. I'm glad you found someone. And I'm glad you're not drowning anymore. Me too. But Daniel was drowning in a different way. In feelings he didn't quite know how to navigate. Being with Evelyn felt right in a way his marriage never had. With Jennifer, there'd always been a sense of obligation, of playing a role he was supposed to fill. With Evelyn, he could just be himself, flawed and tired and sometimes barely holding it together. She didn't expect perfection. She just expected honesty. March brought Evelyn's 3-month scan. Despite 2 previous clear results, the anxiety never fully dissipated. Daniel drove her to the appointment, both of them quiet with tension. Dr. Reeves delivered the news with a smile. Still in partial remission, tumors remain stable, no new growth. I'm moving you to quarterly scans. The relief was palpable. Evelyn let out a breath she'd been holding for months. What are my actual odds now? She asked. Long term. Dr. Reeves was thoughtful. With continued stability, you're looking at years, not months, maybe decades if we're lucky. But ovarian cancer is unpredictable. We stay vigilant, we celebrate the wins, and we don't take anything for granted. That's not very reassuring. No, but it's honest. They celebrated that night at Daniel's apartment with Emma, who'd insisted on making a cake from scratch. It came out lopsided and overfrosted, but Emma was so proud that neither adult had the heart to mention its structural problems. To Evelyn not being sick anymore, Emma declared, raising her juice box. To remission, Evelyn corrected gently, clinking her water glass against Emma's juice box, which is close enough for celebration. After Emma went to bed, Daniel and Evelyn sat on his couch in comfortable silence. The apartment was small and cluttered in a way Evelyn's pristine penthouse would never be. Emma's toys scattered around, dishes in the sink, laundry that needed folding. Evidence of a life actually being lived. I've been thinking, Evelyn said, picking at a loose thread on a throw pillow. About what I want, what my life should look like now. Daniel's heart rate picked up. And I want to step back from the company, not completely. I'm not ready to retire, but delegate more. Maybe groom a successor. She looked at him. I spent 3 years building walls after Marcus died, then 18 months preparing to die. I don't want to waste whatever time I have left living in an office. What do you want to do instead? I don't know yet. Travel, maybe. Learn to paint. Spend time with people who matter, instead of people who are professionally useful. She turned the pillow over in her hands. I want to see what it's like to actually be happy, instead of just successful. Those aren't mutually exclusive. They are for me. Always have been. Success meant sacrifice, relationships, experiences, joy. I told myself it was worth it because the company mattered. But the company will exist after I'm gone. The question is, what else will I have built by then? Daniel understood what she was asking without her having to say it directly. What we have is real, Evelyn. It matters. Does it? We've been in crisis mode since we met. Divorce, cancer, experimental treatment. We've never just been two people getting to know each other normally. There's nothing normal about us. There never will be. Is that enough for you, this complicated, messy thing we're building? Daniel thought about his marriage to Jennifer, safe and conventional and ultimately hollow because they'd both been playing parts instead of being themselves. Then he thought about sitting in hospital waiting rooms with Evelyn, holding her while she cried, watching her face death with more courage than anyone should have to muster. Yeah, he said, it's more than enough. Evelyn kissed him then, slow and deep. And for once, there was no urgency behind it. No fear that this might be their last chance. Just two people choosing each other because they wanted to, not because they were clinging to each other in crisis. When they broke apart, Evelyn rested her forehead against his. I love you. I know I've said it before, but I need you to understand. This isn't gratitude for helping me through treatment. This isn't me being afraid of being alone. This is me actually loving you. I know. Do you? Because I need you to be sure. I need you to know what you're signing up for. I'm difficult and controlling, and I have cancer that could come back any time. That's not a hypothetical. That's a reality we'd be living with. Evelyn, I watched my father die. I know what cancer looks like when it wins. And yeah, it's terrifying that you might get sick again, but you know what's more terrifying? Not being with you because I'm too scared of losing you. That's the most romantic and depressing thing I've ever heard. Welcome to dating a project manager. She laughed, and the sound filled his small apartment with warmth. They spent the night tangled together on his couch, talking about futures that might actually exist, making plans that didn't revolve around scan results and treatment protocols. April brought an unexpected complication. Richard Walsh called an emergency board meeting, citing concerns about Evelyn's long-term capacity to lead. The meeting was scheduled for a Thursday afternoon, and Evelyn arrived at the office that morning with her armor fully in place. Immaculate suit, severe hair, the Ice Queen expression that made employees scatter. He's making his move, she told Daniel in her office. Walsh has been waiting for an excuse to challenge my leadership. My illness gave him one. What's your play? I remind them why they hired me in the first place. Show them the numbers, the growth, the success we've achieved even while I was sick. Her jaw tightened. And if that doesn't work, I go to war. I didn't survive cancer to let some mediocre man with a grudge take my company. The board meeting was brutal. Walsh laid out his case with the precision of someone who'd been planning this for months. Evelyn's illness had created instability. Her reduced hours showed declining commitment. The company needed leadership that could provide certainty, not someone whose health could deteriorate at any moment. Evelyn listened without expression until he finished. Then she stood. "Richard makes valid points," she began, her voice carrying the authority of someone who'd built empires. "My illness did create uncertainty, but let's examine the actual results during this period of supposed instability." She pulled up a presentation Daniel had helped her prepare. Revenue growth. Market share expansion. The Meridian merger that had exceeded all projections. Employee satisfaction scores that were higher than they'd been in 5 years. I was diagnosed 18 months ago. In that time, this company has achieved some of its best performance in history. Not despite my leadership, but because of it. Because I hired exceptional people, delegated effectively, and built systems that function whether I'm in the office 60 hours a week or 40. "But your health," Walsh started, "is my concern, not yours. My doctors have cleared me for full duties. I'm in remission, and even if I weren't, the question isn't whether I'm sick. It's whether I can do the job. The numbers say I can." The room was silent. Evelyn held Walsh's gaze until he looked away. "I'm not stepping down," she continued, "but I'm committed to building a stronger executive team and succession plan. Not because I'm dying, but because it's good business. This company should be able to thrive with or without me. That's the kind of leadership that actually creates stability." The vote, when it came, was 9-3 in Evelyn's favor. Walsh and his 2 allies were outnumbered. Evelyn remained CEO with a clear mandate to continue leading as she saw fit. After the meeting, Daniel found her in her office, staring out the window at the city below. "You okay?" he asked. "I'm exhausted, but I won." She turned to face him. "You know what the funny thing is? A year ago, this would have been everything. Defeating Walsh, keeping my company, proving I'm still capable. But right now, all I want to do is go home, order takeout, and watch stupid movies with you." "That can be arranged." "I'm serious, Daniel. I don't want this to be my whole life anymore. The corporate warfare, the constant proving myself, the sacrificing everything for a company that will replace me the day I die." She moved away from the window. "I want more." "Then take more. You've earned it." "Have I? Or have I just been too scared to want anything else?" The question hung between them. Daniel thought about his own journey, from drowning in work to avoid his failing marriage, to finding purpose in helping Evelyn, to actually building a life that felt worth living. "I think we're both scared," he said finally, "of being happy, of things working out, of getting what we want and then losing it. But fear is a terrible reason to not try." "When did you get so wise?" "Somewhere between holding your hair while you vomited and falling in love with you." Evelyn crossed to him and took his hands. "Move in with me." Daniel blinked. "What?" "Move in with me. You and Emma. My apartment's huge, there's plenty of space, and I'm tired of only seeing you when we schedule it. I want you in my life, Daniel, really in it, not just on weekends and Wednesday dinners." "Evelyn, Emma's only 6. Moving in together, blending families, that's serious." "I know it's serious, but I'm 43 years old and I nearly died. I don't have time to take things slow anymore." She squeezed his hands. "I love you. I love Emma. And I think we could be good together. Not perfect. We're all too damaged for perfect. But good. Really good." Daniel's mind raced. Emma would be thrilled. She adored Evelyn. Jennifer would probably be fine with it, as long as Emma was happy. The logistics would be complicated but manageable. But was he ready for this? To merge his life with someone who'd been his boss less than a year ago, who still had cancer that could return at any moment? Then he thought about Emma's words. "You just have to decide if you want someone anyway." "Okay, he said. "Okay, let's do it. Move in together. Build something real." Evelyn's face lit up with genuine joy. The kind Daniel had seen so rarely, it still surprised him. "Really?" "Really. But we tell Emma together. And we do this right. Therapy if we need it, clear boundaries with Jennifer, the whole thing. I'm not screwing this up. Deal. They told Emma the following weekend over pancakes. She processed the information with the seriousness it deserved, then asked the most important question. Will I get my own room at Evelyn's place? Yes, Evelyn confirmed. A big one. You can decorate it however you want. Even if I want to paint it purple with green stars. Even then, Emma considered this. Okay, I like this plan, but Daddy, you have to promise you won't be sad anymore. Evelyn makes you happy, and I want you to stay happy. I promise to try, sweetheart. That's good enough. Jennifer took the news with surprising grace. I wondered when you'd get there. Emma talks about Evelyn constantly. Just make sure the transitions are smooth and keep me in the loop about schedules. Of course. And Daniel, I'm happy for you, really. You deserve this. The move happened gradually over May and June. Daniel's lease ended in July, which gave them time to transition Emma slowly. Some nights at Evelyn's penthouse, some at Daniel's apartment, until eventually the penthouse became home and the apartment became a place they'd used to live. Emma's room became a purple and green masterpiece that hurt to look at, but made her deliriously happy. Daniel's things mixed with Evelyn's in ways that should have clashed but somehow worked. Work documents next to Emma's art projects. Expensive artwork alongside crayon drawings. The pristine penthouse that had been Evelyn's fortress became a home, messy and loud and full of life. Evelyn's June scan came back stable. Then September's. By the time fall arrived, the constant fear had faded to background anxiety, still there, but not consuming everything. One October evening, Daniel came home from work to find Evelyn and Emma baking cookies, or attempting to bake cookies. The kitchen was a disaster zone of flour and chocolate chips, and what appeared to be an entire egg on the floor. We're making a mess, Emma announced happily. I can see that. Evelyn looked up from where she was trying to salvage cookie dough, flour in her hair, and a smile on her face. Turns out baking is harder than it looks. Turns out you've never baked anything in your life. Fair point. Daniel joined them in the chaos, helping Emma cut out shapes while Evelyn worked on damage control. The cookies came out burned on the edges and raw in the middle, but Emma declared them perfect, and that was what mattered. Later, after Emma was in bed and they'd cleaned up the kitchen disaster, Daniel and Evelyn sat on the couch with glasses of wine, exhausted and content. I never thought I'd have this, Evelyn said quietly. A family. A home that actually feels lived in. Someone who loves me even when I'm covered in flour and ruining cookies. The cookies weren't that bad. They were inedible. Emma was being nice. True. Daniel took her hand. But the effort was good. Evelyn was quiet for a moment. I've been thinking about the future. Real future planning, not just hoping to survive another scan. What kind of planning? Marriage kind of planning. Daniel's heart stopped. I'm not proposing, not yet, but I'm saying I want that. With you. Eventually. When we're both ready and Emma's comfortable and the timing feels right. She turned to look at him. Is that something you'd want? Was it? Daniel had been married before. It had ended in divorce and pain and months of numbness. But sitting here with Evelyn, in the home they'd built together, he couldn't imagine wanting anything else. Yeah, he said. That's something I'd want. Good, then we're on the same page. That's it? We're just agreeing to maybe get married someday? What did you expect, a dramatic proposal? I'm not really the grand gesture type. I've noticed. But 3 weeks later, Evelyn surprised him. Daniel came home to find the penthouse dark except for candles, Emma at Jennifer's for the night, and Evelyn standing by the window in a dress that took his breath away. What's all this? He asked. This is me being romantic, or attempting to be. I'm not very good at it. You're doing fine so far. Evelyn crossed to him, nervous in a way he'd never seen her. I've been thinking about what you said, about fear being a terrible reason not to try. And I realized I've been afraid of this, of asking for what I want instead of just implying it. She pulled a small box from her pocket, and Daniel's world tilted. I know traditionally you're supposed to propose to me, but I'm not traditional, and I'm tired of waiting for the right moment because there is no right moment. There's just now. She opened the box, revealing a simple platinum band. Daniel Hayes, You found me when I was dying and you refused to let me face it alone. You gave me a reason to fight when I'd stopped seeing the point. And you loved me, the real me, not the CEO mask, even when I didn't love myself. Tears were streaming down her face now, but she kept going. I can't promise you forever because I don't know if I have forever. But I can promise you every day I do have. I can promise to love you and Emma with everything I am. I can promise to keep fighting, to keep living, to keep choosing this life we're building together. She took a shaky breath. So will you marry me? Will you take a chance on complicated and messy and uncertain? Daniel was crying too, not bothering to hide it. Yes, absolutely yes. She slipped the ring on his finger with shaking hands, then kissed him like he was the only thing keeping her tethered to earth. When they finally broke apart, both laughing and crying, Daniel held her close. I love you, he said. And you're wrong about one thing. What's that? You're actually pretty good at romantic gestures. Don't let it go to your head. I'm not making this a habit. They were married in December, a small ceremony in Evelyn's apartment with just close friends and family. Emma served as flower girl and took her duties extremely seriously. Jennifer came and brought her new boyfriend, and there was no awkwardness, just genuine happiness for the family they'd all built in their own complicated way. Daniel's vows were simple. I promise to love you through every scan, every fear, every moment of uncertainty. I promise to see you, really see you, even when you're trying to hide. And I promise that whatever time we have, we'll make it count. Evelyn's were shorter. I spent 3 years closed off and 18 months preparing to die. You taught me how to live again. That's a debt I'll spend the rest of my life trying to repay. You already have, Daniel said, and meant it. The year that followed wasn't perfect. Evelyn's scans showed minor fluctuations that caused panic before stabilizing. Daniel struggled with the balance between his own career advancement and supporting Evelyn's reduced schedule. Emma had nightmares about losing another parent. They fought about money and work, and how to handle Emma's questions about Evelyn's illness. But they also laughed, traveled to Maine so Evelyn could show them the beach cottage from her childhood. Celebrated Emma's 7th birthday with a party that got completely out of hand. Built a life that wasn't defined by crisis or fear or the shadow of death. Evelyn stepped down as CEO 18 months after their wedding, transitioning to board chair and advisory roles. She and Daniel started a foundation focused on cancer research and patient support, using her business acumen and his project management skills to actually make a difference. Emma started calling Evelyn Mom 2, which made Evelyn cry the first time it happened. Jennifer and Evelyn became unlikely friends, bonding over shared exasperation with Daniel's tendency to overwork himself. 2 years after the wedding, Evelyn's scans came back completely clear. Full remission. Dr. Reeves was cautiously optimistic about long-term survival. You beat the odds, she told Evelyn. Not many people can say that. I had help, Evelyn said, squeezing Daniel's hand. They celebrated with Emma, who was now 8 and sharp as a tack, already asking questions about corporate law and whether she could intern at the foundation when she was older. You're going to be terrifying when you grow up, Evelyn told her. Good. Terrifying people get stuff done. You taught me that. That night, after Emma was asleep, Daniel and Evelyn sat on their balcony watching the city lights. Evelyn was curled against his side, content and quiet. Do you ever think about how we met? She asked. All the time. You standing in that parking garage looking like you could see straight through me. I saw someone drowning. Takes one to know one. We saved each other. Yeah, we did. Evelyn tilted her head to look up at him. I'm glad we were both stupid enough to try. Me too. They sat in comfortable silence, two broken people who'd found each other in the worst circumstances and built something beautiful anyway. It wasn't the fairy tale ending Daniel had imagined as a kid. It was better. Real and flawed and earned through actual struggle. Because the truth was, happy endings weren't about everything working out perfectly. They were about choosing to keep fighting even when the odds were terrible. About letting people in even when every instinct said to build walls. About loving someone not despite their flaws, but because of the whole messy, complicated package they came in. Daniel had learned that lesson the hard way, sitting in parking garages wondering if anyone would notice if he disappeared. Evelyn had learned it facing death and realizing she'd never actually lived. Now they were teaching it to Emma, that life wasn't about being perfect or having all the answers. It was about showing up, being honest, and choosing the people who chose you back. The city sparkled below them, full of people fighting their own battles, building their own complicated families, learning their own hard lessons. Somewhere out there, someone was probably sitting in a parking garage at 2 a.m. feeling like the world had forgotten them. Daniel hoped they'd find their Evelyn, their moment of recognition that they weren't alone, their reason to keep fighting. Because if two broken people could build this, a marriage, a family, a life worth living, then maybe anyone could. That was the real lesson. Not that everything would be okay, but that with the right person, you could face everything not being okay and still find reasons to smile. Still find joy in burnt cookies and purple-painted rooms and mornings waking up next to someone who saw all your worst parts and loved you anyway. Daniel looked at Evelyn, at the ring on her finger that matched his, at the life they'd built from the wreckage of who they used to be. "I love you, he said. "I know. You tell me constantly. And I'm going to keep telling you every single day. That's annoyingly sweet. You married me. You knew what you were getting into." Evelyn smiled and kissed him, and in that moment, everything else fell away. The fear, the uncertainty, the knowledge that cancer could return and steal their future. None of it mattered right now. Right now, they had this: each other, Emma sleeping safely in her room, a whole life stretching ahead full of possibility. It was more than either of them had ever expected to have. And it was more than enough.